Chapter 720. P.S. The 30th Alliance has been born. The Alliance leader is sword-playing without a sword. The morning air was exceptionally fresh. The woods were shrouded in a faint mist, and the chirping of birds was melodious. However, Zhao Tianxing was not in such a good mood. He sat dejectedly at the stone table in the gazebo and sighed at Xiao Yueling. Masters Junior, I didn't find anything. It looks like there's no hope. Zhao Tianxing was dressed in a green robe. His tall figure and handsome face made him look like a dashing jade tree. Xiao Yueling's face was covered by a white veil, revealing only her bright eyes. Her slanted eyebrows gave off a dignified aura as she glanced at Zhao Tianxing. If there's nothing, then there's nothing. My mission when I left the mountain was to capture an Azura. Zhao Tianxing said, Masters Junior, if I can't capture an Azura, how can I face Master when I return to the mountain? Capturing an Azura isn't just about strength. It's also about luck. Xiao Yueling shook her head. Your master should understand. He won't blame you. Master always said that luck is also a form of strength. Without luck, strength alone is useless. Zhao Tianxing curled his lips and said helplessly, Master said that my luck isn't that good. Because of Fa Yuan and Chu Li, I'll be overshadowed. Xiao Yueling scoffed. Your master's way of thinking is strange. Don't listen to him. Zhao Tianxing smiled. I think Master has a point. Luck is indeed very important. I'm not as good as Chu Li. Luck. Xiao Yueling shook her head. Luck is like the waves of the sea. There's a low tide and a high tide. If you rely on luck, you won't be able to achieve anything. If you don't have a strong will, what can you achieve? Zhao Tianxing nodded. Xiao Yueling said, Your master has a weak personality. That's why he's so useless. Otherwise, with his qualifications, he would have achieved much more. Master is already very impressive now, Zhao Tianxing said. Impressive? Xiao Yueling said impatiently, Think about Chu Li. He started out as a servant and climbed his way up to become a rank 1 chief. How many steps did he climb? What about your master? Master feels that it's useless to struggle, so he's content. Zhao Tianxing smiled and said, So, I started researching some strange martial arts. Master said that the Tempest Temple didn't suppress the Azuras out of kindness, but they wanted to create more powerful martial arts through the Azuras. Master also wanted to do the same. If Azura was so easy to study, the Tempest Temple would have succeeded long ago. Xiao Yueling shook her head and said, The Azuras have very deep roots. They're also from the Grandmaster's realm beyond heaven. Their martial arts are not the same as ours. But the sect elders all support Master. Zhao Tianxing sighed. That's why I must capture Azuras when I leave the mountain this time. Master is waiting for me. He even said that if I can't capture Azuras, I might as well return to the mountain and never come out again. Nonsense. Xiao Yueling scoffed. Zhao Tianxing quickly nodded. Xiao Yueling scoffed. But since they've given the order, there's nothing I can do about it. I'll just have to take my time searching. Zhao Tianxing's face instantly turned gloomy. Brother Chu, do you have any ideas? Zhao Tianxing asked. Xiao Yueling said, Do you still want him to ask for one from the Tempest Temple? Zhao Tianxing smiled sheepishly. Xiao Yueling frowned at him. Zhao Tianxing said, Masters Junior, I know this is very unambitious, but there's really nothing I can do. It's like looking for a needle in a haystack. How can I possibly find one? Master and the others don't care what I do, as long as I can capture an Azura. Xiao Yueling shook her head and said, You. Just look for one yourself. As they spoke, Chu Li fluttered over with an Azura in his hand. He landed in the gazebo and tossed the Azura onto the ground. Then, he gave a fist salute and smiled. Aunt, Brother Zhao. Brother Chu. Zhao Tianxing was instantly overjoyed. He looked at the Azura on the ground. Is this for us? Chu Li nodded. I saw that you guys wanted one too, so I happened to encounter one. So, I caught it for you so that you don't have to fight with the Tempest Temple. How did you encounter it? Xiao Yueling frowned. You didn't ask for it from the Tempest Temple, did you? Chu Li waved his hand. I don't have the face to do that. It was really a coincidence. Aunt, you and brother Zhao are lucky. Haha, you're really lucky. Zhao Tianxing beamed. Brother Chu, you've really helped me a lot. I can't thank you enough. If you need my help in the future, just let me know. Chu Li smiled and nodded. Zhao Tianxing's words were unreliable. Chu Li did not really intend to help him. He was just saying it, but deep down, he was still hostile toward him. Xiao Yueling asked, You encountered an Azura again? Chu Li replied, The Azuras are very arrogant now. I can't help it. You have to be careful. Some Azuras are very powerful. You won't be able to defeat them. Xiao Yueling frowned. If you see that the situation is not good, run away. Don't force yourself. Chu Li was a direct descendant of the High Duke's public house. He was a master trained by the High Duke's public house. He was different from the other grandmasters of the High Duke's public house. He was truly one of them. Moreover, he had that kind of relationship with Shao Qi. Yes. Chu Li nodded and gave a fist salute. I'll take my leave then. Go ahead. Xiao Yueling nodded. Chu Li glided away. Zhao Tianxing exclaimed, Masters Jr., Brother Chu is really a good friend. Xiao Yueling glanced at him and asked, Do you think he's a good friend? Of course. Zhao Tianxing laughed heartily. He knew that we wanted an Azura, so he caught one for us. Xiao Yueling had already given up on him. Go back now. Don't cause any more trouble. I've been wanting to go back to the sect. Zhao Tianxing was overjoyed. Thank you, Masters Jr. He understood that Xiao Yueling wanted to protect him as they returned to the mountain to avoid encountering powerful enemies. He was extremely grateful for her concern. Chu Li had given them an Azura, so he had no regrets. He tried to use the all-knowing scripture again but did not discover anything. The range of the all-knowing scripture was limited. Chu Li's cultivation level was still too weak, so it was impossible for him to detect Azuras that were too far away. He estimated that he could detect Azuras from 12 miles away, but he would not be able to detect them any further. He would have to continue cultivating. Since it was so dangerous, it was not appropriate for Xiao Shi to follow him. He put on the fog beast mask and transformed into Chu Lingfeng before appearing in a restaurant in Ji River Valley. Ji River Valley was bustling as usual. It was morning, so it was breakfast time. This restaurant was bustling with activity. Chu Li went up to the 3rd floor and found a seat. The people around him were leisurely eating and chatting. Have you heard? Someone swallowed a mouthful of soup and raised his voice. Another village has been massacred. Sigh. The people shook their heads. Elder Jiang, forget it. We're eating. Don't talk about these things that spoil your appetite. It seems like the High Duke is going to take action personally this time. If the High Duke doesn't take action, I'm afraid no one will be able to deal with these people. It's such a pity, second young master. I heard that he'll lose his arm. Chapter 721. P.S. I wanted to write at least 5 chapters, but I really can't write anymore, so I can only write at 4 chapters. I've broken my bottom line. I won't be able to sleep well tonight. That's true, these people are too cruel. 3 villages were completely slaughtered. How cold-blooded are they? They didn't even let the old and the children go. They're really inhumane. These people are inhumane. Second young master was able to survive because of his good fortune and the High Duke's good deeds. Otherwise, he wouldn't have been able to escape this time. Humph! Someone sneered in disdain. It was the protectors who fought to hold those people back. That's how they managed to save second young master. Elder Feng, don't be unconvinced. Isn't this because of good deeds? Why did these protectors protect second young master with their lives? Isn't it because the High Duke is sincere to the protectors and never mistreated them? That's why the protectors risked their lives to protect second young master. Elder Lee's words are true. The protectors put themselves in the High Duke's shoes. Otherwise, their lives would still be more important at critical times. The High Duke's public house is really kind. Whenever something happens, the young masters will personally go out instead of letting the protectors fight on their own. Just this alone is enough to give them a thumbs up. Eldest young master has also been seriously injured several times. The High Duke's public house is not a coward. This time, the High Duke will personally go out and capture those people. Once they're captured, they must be tortured to death. Yes, we can't let them die easily. They killed so many people, they're simply inhumane. I just don't know if the High Duke will succeed if he personally goes out. I say, Elder Zhao, your words are too inauspicious. That's right, if the High Duke personally goes out, what can't he take down? This time, it's not a trivial matter. Otherwise, the High Duke wouldn't have personally gone out of the public house. The battle between martial arts masters is not a joke. It's not like you can win just because you think you can. Many times, it's unexpected. Anyway, I don't believe that the High Duke will lose. I'm not afraid of losing. I'm just afraid that the High Duke will be injured. If that happens, our public house will be in trouble. Sigh. Our G public house has a hard life. None of the martial arts sects in our territory are kind, and they're all troublemakers. Now that this group of people has appeared, the G public house has really suffered. What else can we do? Our martial arts skills are not good enough. Even if we want to help, we won't be able to. I heard that there are a few martial arts masters who want to join the High Duke's public house. They want to help the High Duke's public house. Yes, there are a few of them, someone said and shook his head. However, the High Duke's public house has rejected them, saying that they don't need our help. The High Duke's public house will definitely be able to handle it. Everyone should eat and drink, there's no need to worry about this. How can I not worry? One of the elders sighed. If we can't capture these fellows, then our public house will be finished. If we let them kill as they please, the world will fall into chaos. It's not to the extent that the world will descend into chaos, but the G River Valley will definitely descend into chaos. No matter how savage those people are, would they dare to attack the G River Valley? Why wouldn't they dare? As far as I know, there are many grandmasters living in seclusion in the city. If those fellows dare to come here, I guarantee that they won't be able to leave. Yes, they wouldn't dare. Chu Li frowned and stood up. He walked to a table and sat down. There was only one elder sitting at this table. No one came over to sit, so it looked very lonely. This elder had white hair and a ruddy complexion. He was dressed in a brocade robe and looked very amiable, but no one came over to sit with him. It was as if they had subconsciously distanced themselves from him. Chu Li looked at this ruddy old man and said in a low voice, "I didn't expect you to be so bold." The elder raised his head to look at Chu Li. He had a round face and a gentle appearance. There was not a single trace of murderous intent on his face. He smiled, revealing his extraordinarily white teeth. An eerie aura assaulted Chu Li's face as he asked, "Who are you?" Chu Li replied, "It doesn't matter who I am. Who are you?" "Young fella, you've got guts." The elder smiled. "Aren't you afraid of death?" Chu Li replied, "This is the G River Valley. If I yell, you won't be able to leave the city." Chu Li's heart trembled, and he felt the urge to run away. Chu Li did not expect that an Azura would actually dare to enter G River Valley. Furthermore, this Azura was no ordinary Azura. As he sat in front of Chu Li, his aura was as imposing as a mountain. Chu Li felt suffocated, which made his heart palpitate. His instincts kept reminding him to stay away from this man and run for his life. However, Chu Li knew that he had no other choice. If he did not want to see this Azura massacre the G River Valley, he had to step forward. I'd like to see what other martial arts masters there are in the city. The elder shook his head and smiled. High Duke Ji is no longer here. Who else could stand in my way? Do you? Chuli replied, I'd like to see how powerful you are. You better think this through. The old man slowly glanced at the surroundings and said indifferently, The people around you don't know anything about you. Are you willing to die in vain like this? I have no other choice. Chuli huffed. I'm starting to like you a little. The elder smiled. Chuli became more vigilant. It seemed that the higher the Azura's cultivation level was, the more rational they would be, and the harder it would be to identify them. If it were not for the omniscient mirror and the all-knowing scripture, Chuli would not have been able to determine that this kind old man who looked like a rich man was a terrifying Azura. Moreover, this Azura was different from the ones he had encountered before. The depth of his cultivation level made him feel helpless. Chuli asked, How about we head out of the city? The elder shook his head. You're trying to lure me out, aren't you? Hee, don't waste your time. If you can defeat me, then forget it. If you can't, I'll just go on a killing spree and massacre the entire Ji River Valley. Chuli frowned and scoffed. You're from the Divine Church of Azura? You know about the Divine Church of Azura? The elder sized Chuli up and nodded. There aren't many people in the world who have such a cultivation level at your age. Chuli scoffed. Looks like you're really from the Divine Church of Azura. Hee. The elder shook his head. It doesn't make a difference to you whether I am or not. You're going to die today. He suddenly struck out with his palm. The two of them were very close, so his palm strike was as fast as a ghost. Chuli had been using the manifestation of nature restoration all this time. When the elder struck, he had already predicted and prepared for it. The heavenly demonic orb fell to his precordium. Boundless energy emanated from his body as his inner energy surged. Then, he struck out with his divine light fist. Bang! There was a thunderous explosion, and a strong gust of wind blew, causing the people around them to stumble. The tables and chairs were shifted and overturned. It was a mess. Chuli slid 2 meters away from the chair he was sitting on and leaned against a vermilion pillar. He stared at the elder with a solemn expression. The elder grinned and nodded. Your cultivation level is indeed extraordinary. Chuli frowned and scoffed. The same goes for you. Who are you? How dare you use force in Ji River Valley? Aren't you afraid that the High Duke's public house's protectors will cripple your martial arts? Someone stood up and shouted. Chuli did not even look at him. Instead, he suddenly struck out with his fist. Bang! The man flew out of the window and out of the restaurant. The man was a little dazed when he landed on the ground. It was as if an invisible force had supported him to land, so he was not hurt at all. He turned to look at his surroundings. No one was helping him. Chapter 722. P.S. No matter what, the bottom line must not be broken. In the end, I still wrote the 5th chapter. The elder looked at Chuli with a smile and shook his head. You can protect one, but can you protect everyone? Everyone looked at the two curiously. They were all very strange. Logically speaking, all the martial arts masters in Ji River Valley knew that they could not fight in the city. Otherwise, their martial arts would be crippled and they would be thrown out of the city. Regardless of the reason, the protectors of the High Duke's public house would not show mercy if they started fighting. It had been a long time since anyone had fought in Ji River Valley. They wanted to see how the protectors of the Ji public house would cripple their martial arts. Chuli frowned and scoffed. Protecting one is one. You're an Azura, and everyone is calling for you to be killed. Instead of hiding, you're even parading through the city. Aren't you afraid that the people from the Tempest Temple will come? You know about the Tempest Temple too. It seems that you have a deep understanding of our divine church. The old man said calmly, The monks of the great Tempest Temple are quite capable, but it's all in vain if they want to capture this old man. They're just wasting their efforts. After I've massacred the entire G River Valley, even if the monks of the Great Tempest Temple come, I won't be afraid. Chuli said, there are many hidden masters in the city. I'm afraid you won't be so smug. They're just a motley crew. The elder scoffed and a look of disdain appeared on his face. What's there to be afraid of about scattered soldiers? Chuli raised his eyebrows and scoffed. There's nothing to fear about scattered soldiers. What should I be afraid of is an army, right? You're very smart. The elder chuckled. It's a pity that you're so smart. Why don't you tell me your name? I'm Chu Lingfeng. Chuli scoffed. Chu Lingfeng. The elder nodded slowly and muttered, I've never heard of this name. Chuli said, I'm just a nobody. Impossible. The elder shook his head. You're so young and have such a cultivation level. How can you be a nobody? Chuli of the North and Du Feng of the South are probably no more than that. Are you one of them? Chuli smiled. The elder glanced at him and shook his head. Chu Lingfeng, your surname is Chu too. Is that an alias? Chuli laughed. You're dreaming. He was secretly shocked. Such a sharp mind, such wisdom, it was truly frightening. The elder pondered as he sized him up and slowly nodded. You're Chuli, right? Even if I'm Chuli, Chuli said calmly, what's the difference? Take another punch from me. He punched out fiercely, and the fist energy smashed towards the old man like a rock. The old man lightly threw out a shura palm. It was the same shura palm, but in his hands it was like a ghost, with a hint of elegance. Bang! The sound of muffled thunder exploded, and everyone felt their bodies tremble. Their chests were filled with agitation, and they felt like vomiting. Chuli threw another punch with his left hand, dispersing the remaining force of the shura palm. Because his back was pressed against the pillar, he could not retreat. All right, take another hit from me. The old man suddenly appeared in front of Chuli in a flash, and pressed his palm down lightly. Chuli took a step out from the chair and appeared behind him. Bang! Suddenly, the shura palm made a turn and went behind him to attack Chuli. It collided with Chuli's cloud-slashing palm, and a muffled sound was heard. The surrounding people consciously stepped back, trying to avoid the sound that was like thunder. Huh! The old man looked at Chuli in surprise. He felt his inner energy enter Chuli's body and immediately disappear. Chuli's body was like a bottomless pit, and no amount of inner energy could fill it up. He was surprised and wanted to see if it could be filled up. He incessantly activated his inner energy, trying to overwhelm Chuli. However, Chuli did not move at all, and looked at him expressionlessly. The heavenly demonic orb was contentedly devouring the inner energy. He pretended to be strained and said, You came alone? Hee, is it not enough for me? The old man smiled. He accelerated the activation of his inner energy. It seemed that he was not pressuring Chuli enough for him to speak. Chuli said, If you're alone, I'm afraid you can't beat me. Hee. The old man laughed and shook his head, and activated his inner energy again. He suddenly pressed his left palm towards Chuli. Chuli raised his left hand and pointed his index finger. The old man's body suddenly stopped, and his face suddenly glowed red. Chuli pointed his other finger, and the old man floated away and attacked with his left palm. Bang! Chuli disappeared, and the table where he was originally standing exploded into pieces. He sighed to himself. The petrifying finger had only been on the old man for a moment, and there was no time for him to use it again. Chuli used the petrifying finger again, but it could not hit the old man. The old man moved so fast that he was like a shadow. Even if Chuli could see him clearly, it was useless. He was too fast, and he was moving in such a short distance. The old man felt the power of this finger energy and frowned. You're a disciple of the Tempest Temple? He was filled with murderous intent, and as long as one was a disciple of the Tempest Temple, he must die. However, his face was calm and he said, It seems that I've made a mistake, you're not Chuli. Chuli smiled, and with a finger energy from his left hand, and a divine light fist from his right, he forced the old man to stay away. The old man scoffed, and his original intention to tease Chu Li was gone, only to be replaced with murderous intent. He suddenly flashed, and instantly appeared in front of Chu Li. Chu Li had already predicted that the petrifying finger and the divine light fist would land on him at the same time. Bang! The elder struck out with his palm to meet the petrifying finger. He ignored the divine light fist and allowed it to hit him. The wind blew, and the Shura palm blocked the petrifying finger. Chu Li frowned. The Shura palm was so refined that its palm energy was almost tangible, and yet it could block the petrifying finger. It was truly terrifying. Young man, die. The old man did not care that he was hit by the divine light fist, but the friendly smile on his face disappeared. A layer of green energy flashed, and he suddenly appeared behind Chu Li like a ghost. Chu Li turned around and used the spear finger strike. Bang! The Shura palm dispersed the spear finger strike and hit him. Bang! Chu Li flew out. He spat out a mouthful of blood in the air. The old man caught up with him in a flash and hit Chu Li's chest again. Chu Li spat out another mouthful of blood, and his body crashed through the window, falling to the ground. Chu Li's body flashed twice in the air, and he appeared 10 feet away. The old man laughed coldly. Trying to escape? Stay here. He appeared behind Chu Li in a flash, and attacked with the Shura palm again. Chu Li disappeared in a flash, and reappeared 10 feet away. The old man chased after him. If it was before, he would have ignored Chu Li and killed the people around him, but now that he saw that Chu Li was a disciple of the Tempest Temple, he did not hesitate to focus his killing intent on Chu Li. He wanted to kill him first, and then the others. Chu Li's body movement technique was extremely fast, and the old man's was like a ghost. The two of them flashed, and in the blink of an eye, they disappeared from the sight of the people in the restaurant. "Who is he?" someone asked in a low voice. "Could it be Azura?" A middle-aged man pointed to the ground, but Chu Li had written something with his finger. "Azura, call High Duke Ji immediately." Everyone looked at each other when they saw these words. "It can't be true, right?" someone said. "Let's report to the Ji public house first. They're attacking in the town anyway. The protectors of the Ji public house will be mobilized." Chapter 723. P.S. If I stay up all night, I'll become a cripple the next day. I won't be updating in time today, please forgive me. There were many spies from the High Duke's public house in the city. While the crowd was still discussing, a burly young man strode up to the 3rd floor. Behind him were 5 people, including an old man with a white beard and eyebrows who held a folding fan and 4 middle-aged protectors. When the crowd saw the burly young man, they made way and fist saluted. "Eldest young master." The burly young man had an ordinary appearance, but his square face was kind and upright. He fist saluted them one by one in return, looking serious and calm. He stood in front of the pillar and studied the words. The crowd stared at him. The burly young man frowned after reading the words, then looked around and shook his head. From the powder on the ground, he knew that the cultivation level of these 2 people was very high. He was far inferior to them, and only his father could fight them. Very troublesome. He was in the public house, and his father was not around. Although the protectors around him were strong, they could not reach the cultivation level of these 2 people. The old man behind him waved his folding fan and chuckled. "That's just sensationalism. There's no Azura." The burly young man glanced at him. The old man gave him a look and shook his head. "Whether it's an Azura or not, everyone can tell at a glance. When Azuras fight, they usually turn into skeletons. Did that guy turn into a skeleton?" The crowd shook their heads. "No. He's quite a normal person." The elder nodded in satisfaction. "Isn't that right? Everyone, don't worry, the High Duke's public house will keep the Azuras out of the city. We've sent masters to guard the city gates, so they won't be able to enter. Everyone, just relax." The crowd breathed a sigh of relief. The burly young man frowned and turned to leave with his hands behind his back. The 5 people quickly followed him out of the restaurant. "Mr. Liu, are you afraid that everyone will panic if they find out?" the burly young man asked. The old man sighed and nodded. "Eldest young master, this person should be an Azura." The burly young man was the eldest son of the Ji public house, Zhou Zifeng, and the old man was the guest, Lu Yuanqing. Zhou Zifeng said, "How dare he? This guy's cultivation level is really scary. If young Master Xiao didn't lure him away, I don't know what would have happened." Lu Yuanqing looked worried. "I'm worried that he's trying to lure us away." "It can't be?" Zhou Zifeng's expression changed slightly. "The intelligence of the Azuras cannot be underestimated. We cannot treat them as monsters who only know how to kill," Lu Yuanqing said. "Now it all depends on that young Master Chu. I wonder who he is," Zhou Zifeng said. "His surname is Chu and his cultivation level is extremely high. Could it be Chu Li?" "It's very possible," Lu Yuanqing said. "Would Chu Li be so kind?" Zhou Zifeng scoffed and furrowed his brows. "We'll have to send a letter to father immediately and ask him to come back. At the same time, seal off the news in the city. Don't let news of Azura spread." "Yes." Lu Yuanqing cupped his fist. Chu Li seemed to be riding the wind as he glided forward at an incredible speed. However, the old man was faster than him, and the distance between them was gradually shortened. Just as he was about to get close, the old man sent out an Azura palm. Chu Li easily dodged the attack without slowing down at all. He had the omniscient mirror and the nature restoration manifestation. With both of them combined, he could predict the elder's movements. As long as the distance was far enough, he would be able to react. He estimated that in order to dodge the elder's attack calmly, he would need to be at least 10 meters away. It would be very dangerous within 10 meters. Even if he could predict the elder's movements were too fast for him to react in time, and he could only watch helplessly as he was beaten. The omniscient mirror was constantly activated to observe the changes in the elder's thoughts. Once he had the intention to return to Ji River Valley, Chu Li would immediately turn around and use the spear finger strike. The spear finger strike was an antique study unique to the Tempest Temple. When he saw it, the elder's killing intent surged and he rushed toward Chu Li again. Chu Li's speed was not as fast as his, but every time he was about to catch up, he would suddenly turn in another direction. This sudden change in speed and abruptly increased the distance between them once again. The elder's heart was burning with anger and his killing intent was almost tangible. As they got further away from Ji River Valley, Chu Li stopped using the spear finger strike and rushed forward. At the same time, he used the cloud slashing power to purify his inner energy and prepare for the next finger strike. The two of them ran for nearly 1,000 miles in one go. When the moonlight became hazy, Chu Li's aura was still surging and he did not seem to be exhausted. The elder, on the other hand, was a little tired. Initially, he wanted to rely on his profound cultivation level to exhaust Chu Li's inner energy and then teach him a lesson. He wanted him to scream in pain for a few days before he died to avenge the Tempest Temple's scheme. Therefore, he did not kill him right away as he was afraid that he would lose control and kill him directly. Now that Chu Li's aura was surging, he knew that if this went on, he would lose first. Suddenly, his flesh shrank and he turned into a skeleton. His eyes glowed red like two swords. Bang! With a sudden flash, he moved as fast as a phantom and appeared behind Chu Li in an instant before he struck with his palm. Chu Li did not dodge. Instead, he gathered the finger force that he had painstakingly prepared and pointed his left index finger at the elder's chest. At the same time, his chest was hit by a Shura palm and he was sent flying. The heavenly demonic orb instantly absorbed the palm force, but he was still injured. Arg! He spat out a mouthful of blood in the air. Then, his figure disappeared in a flash and reappeared behind the elder. Once again, he pointed with his finger. The elder's body, which was initially frozen, froze again. Chu Li kept pointing with his fingers, using the petrifying finger to hold him in place. The long sword at his waist turned into a cold light and cut the tendons in the elder's arms and legs. Then, he sealed all the acupuncture points on his body. Only then did he heave a sigh of relief and wipe away the blood at the corner of his mouth. Spiritual energy surged in from all directions, nourishing his internal organs and healing his injuries. The healing ability of the life and death scripture was getting stronger. He secretly sighed at his luck. If the elder had not been provoked by him and wanted to kill him at all costs, he might not have been able to hit him with his finger. The elder glared at him unwillingly. The skeleton slowly dissipated and his flesh unfolded, returning him to his normal appearance. Chu Li pointed a few more times and completely sealed his acupuncture points, causing him to fall into a deep sleep. He channeled his energy and regulated his breathing for a moment. Then, with a flash, he appeared in a small courtyard with the elder. Shin Su, who was wearing a nightgown, appeared in the courtyard in a flash. He had a vigilant look on his face. When he saw that it was Chu Li, he sighed in relief. "Why are you here?" Chu Li left the elder and fist saluted. "I hope I'm not disturbing Master's rest." "Who's this?" Shin Su frowned and stared at the elder. "Could it be an Azura?" Chu Li nodded. "Yes." Shin Su looked up at him. "You met him too?" Chu Li said, "Master, I saw that the Tempest Temple and Green Deer Cliff are looking for Azuras. They seem to be trying to decipher their martial arts and physique. Don't we need them at Amethyst Mountain?" "Yes, the sect is also researching it." Shin Su nodded. "Otherwise, there wouldn't have been disciples harmed. Now that the spiritual energy of heaven and earth is dissipating, it's getting harder to become an enlightened master. Azura is a glimmer of hope." "Then I'll give him to you, Master." Chu Li smiled. "I met him by chance." Shin Su did not hold back and nodded. "Be careful, don't provoke them again." Chu Li said, "Master, you have to be careful too. Seal his acupuncture points in time. This person's cultivation level is higher than mine. I went through a lot of trouble and was lucky to win against him." "Yes." Shin Su's expression darkened. His cultivation level was higher than his disciples. If they were to really fight, he would not be a match for him. He had to be careful. When he thought of this, he bent over to check and sealed his acupuncture points again. Chu Li fist saluted. "I'll take my leave then. Go." Shin Su waved his hand. "Don't delay your cultivation. Enter the dojo as soon as possible." Chapter 724. Zhou Zifeng sat in the main hall of the High Duke's public house with a gloomy expression on his face. Lu Yuanqing sat below him with a frown. "Eldest Master, the people in the city are in a state of panic and rumors are spreading everywhere. I'm afraid that we can't suppress them any longer. Someone is taking the opportunity to stir up trouble." "Damn it." Zhou Zifeng slammed the armrest of his armchair and scoffed. "Can we find them?" Lu Yuanqing shook his head. "It'll be difficult," Zhou Zifeng said. "Fortunately, that fellow didn't return. He's being held back by Master Chu, but I'm afraid that there will be a second one. When that happens, there won't be many people left in the Ji River Valley." "Exactly." Lu Yuanqing nodded. "The High Duke should have received the news. Once he returns, everyone will be reassured. Now, we can only hope for the High Duke to return as soon as possible. It'll probably take another 3 days," Zhou Zifeng said. "At least 3 days." Lu Yuanqing said, 3 days? How about this? Let the protectors of the High Duke's public house go out and patrol the streets in groups of a few to calm the people." Zhou Zifeng nodded slowly. "That's the only way." Lu Yuanqing sighed. "If that's the case, the High Duke's public house will be in danger." Zhou Zifeng waved his hand. I'll go to the restaurant outside the city and stay there. That's good. Lu Yuanqing nodded. Eldest master sitting in the restaurant in the city played an important role in calming the people's hearts. When the people saw that eldest master was there, they would not be affected by the rumors and their hearts would not waver. As long as they could hold on for 3 days, the High Duke would return and they would calm down immediately. Hurried footsteps could be heard from outside. An old man strode in with an anxious look on his face. Eldest master, second master has fainted. Zhou Zifeng stood up and walked out. Wasn't he awake this morning? He's deteriorating very quickly. The old man followed behind him and said anxiously, Eldest master, if this goes on, the consequences will be unimaginable. Zhou Zifeng arrived at a courtyard with a gloomy face. A beautiful young woman was sitting in a gazebo and weeping. When she saw Zhou Zifeng, she turned away and pretended not to see him. Zhou Zifeng could not be bothered with his second sister-in-law, who was complaining about him. He strode into the bedroom and saw the young man lying on the bed. The young man had an oval face. His tan face was handsome, and he was far more handsome than his big brother. At this moment, he was frowning and unconscious. 2 old men stood beside the bed with solemn expressions. The 2 elders greeted Zhou Zifeng with a fist salute when they saw him. Zhou Zifeng waved his hand. Still can't suppress it? There's nothing we can do. The 2 of them shook their heads. The thin elder said in a deep voice, the Shura Palm's power is too vicious. Elixirs are useless against it. Only pure inner energy can suppress it. However, the Azura who injured second young master has an extremely high cultivation base. Is there no other way? Zhou Zifeng scoffed. The skinny old man sighed. I said that I would cut off the second young master's arm, but it's too late now. The Shura Palm force has already spread throughout his body, I'm afraid. He shook his head as he spoke. Another old man said in a deep voice, I'm afraid he won't last past tonight. Nonsense. Zhou Zifeng scoffed. Second younger brother has a long life, it's impossible for him to die. Eldest young master, if the High Duke returns, there's still a chance of survival. The thin elder said in a low voice, if the High Duke doesn't arrive by tomorrow morning, I'm afraid that the second young master won't be able to hold on any longer. There's nothing we can do. Shura Palm. Zhou Zifeng slammed the edge of the bed. Lu Yuanqing also walked in. Zhou Zifeng turned to look at him eagerly. Lu Yuanqing shook his head in resignation. There was nothing he could do in this situation. Zhou Zifeng looked quietly at Zhou Zimo, who was in agony, and sighed. Second brother's life is really tough. Second young master is blessed by the heavens. He'll be fine, Lu Yuanqing said with a sigh. Everyone nodded. Now that things had come to this, they could only think of it this way. As for whether or not the heavens would help them, everyone knew in their hearts that unless the house of High Duke returned to the public house now, second young master would definitely die. The Shura Palm was just that, overbearing and terrifying. All of you may leave. I'll keep second brother company. Zhou Zifeng waved his hand. Everyone quietly left the bedroom and went to the courtyard. When they saw the graceful woman weeping in the gazebo, their hearts became even heavier. The sound of footsteps could be heard as a middle-aged man walked in quietly and looked at the crowd. Elder Huang, what's the matter? Lu Yuanqing asked. Elder Huang quickly said, there's a young master Chuli outside. Chuli? Everyone was stunned. Lu Yuanqing hurriedly said, Chuli? Yes. Elder Huang quickly nodded. He's very young but has a very imposing manner. I dare not neglect him, so I can only report to eldest young master. Invite him in, Lu Yuanqing said. I'll speak to eldest young master. Yes. Elder Huang turned and left. When Lu Yuanqing returned to the bedroom, Zhou Zifeng stared at Zhou Zimo and scoffed. I'm not in the mood to meet anyone now. Eldest young master, second young master can be saved, Lu Yuanqing hurriedly said. Zhou Zifeng was stunned and turned to look at him. Lu Yuanqing said, "This Chu Li is a master. He might be able to save second young master. Moreover, as we've discussed earlier, it might be Chu Li who lured the Azura away." Zhou Zifeng frowned. "Can he really be Chu Lingfeng?" Lu Yuanqing said, "Let's try everything we can." "Very well." Zhou Zifeng slowly nodded. "I'm afraid he's here on behalf of the Secret Guardians Hall to investigate us. We'll talk after we save second young master," Lu Yuanqing said. "The High Duke's public house is open and aboveboard. We're not afraid of his investigation." Zhou Zifeng got up and walked out. When he arrived at the main hall, he saw Chu Li in a white robe sitting there drinking tea. Zhou Zifeng gave a fist salute and smiled. "Chief Chu, I apologize for not coming out to greet you." Chu Li got up and did a fist salute. "Eldest young master, you're welcome. I'm sorry to have disturbed you." Sigh. "Chief Chu, you've come at a bad time." Zhou Zifeng smiled bitterly. "My father isn't here, my second brother is seriously injured, and everyone in the city is in a state of panic. Fortunately, Chief Chu, you lured the Azura away yesterday." "Me?" Chu Li pretended to be surprised. "I haven't even arrived at Ji River Valley yesterday." "Wasn't it you, Chief Chu?" Zhou Zifeng stared at him. Chu Li smiled. "I wouldn't dare to simply admit such a good thing. Looks like we've got the wrong person." Zhou Zifeng nodded. "May I know why you're here, Chief Chu?" "I'd like to meet the High Duke." Chu Li smiled. "When will the High Duke return?" Zhou Zifeng shook his head. "Chief Chu, why don't you wait in the city for a few days? It won't be long before my father returns." "All right." Chu Li nodded and gave a fist salute. "I'll take my leave then." With that, he walked out. He still had to maintain his identity as Chu Lingfeng, as it would be useful in the future. This was an identity that the Secret Guardians Hall had meticulously prepared, so there were no flaws. "Wait," Zhou Zifeng hurriedly said. Chu Li stopped and looked at him. Zhou Zifeng pondered for a moment, not knowing what to say. Lu Yuanqing gave a fist salute. "I'm Lu Yuanqing. Greetings, Chief Chu." Chu Li returned a fist salute. Lu Yuanqing said, "My second young master suffered a shurapalm and is now seriously injured. I know that Chief Chu has a high cultivation level. I wonder if you can." Chapter 725. Zhou Zifeng gave a fist salute and bowed deeply. In his moment of despair, he was grateful for Chu Li's forthrightness and friendliness, regardless of whether he could cure his second brother or not. Chu Li gave a fist salute and smiled. "I'm just afraid that I won't be able to save second young master and let eldest young master down." "We'll see what happens to second young master." Zhou Zifeng sighed. Chu Li nodded with a smile and followed them to the courtyard. Everyone stared at him as soon as he arrived at the courtyard. The young woman in the gazebo looked over as well. "Sister-in-law, this is Chief Chu Li," Zhou Zifeng said. "He's here to see second young master." The young woman was very beautiful. At this moment, her eyes were red and delicate, adding to her charm. She said lightly, "Chief Steward Chu, I have long heard of your great name. Can you save my husband?" Chu Li nodded. "Don't worry, I'll do my best." "Thank you very much." The young woman bowed and walked towards Chu Li. "Please." She did not even look at Zhou Zifeng. Zhou Zifeng shook his head helplessly and extended his hand. Chu Li pretended not to see and walked inside. It was best for him not to get involved in family matters. He could see the reason clearly. Initially, eldest young master requested to lead the protectors to deal with Azura, but the High Duke decided to let eldest young master stay in the public house while second young master led the protectors. In the end, before he could arrive, second young master and his men encountered Azura. He was lucky enough to escape but was severely injured. After returning to the public house, his injuries worsened and were incurable. The young woman felt that fate was unfair. Her husband suffered on behalf of eldest young master. Seeing eldest young master alive and well, and her husband on the verge of death, She felt that eldest young master was an eyesore, and did not want to see him. Chu Li came to the bedroom and looked at Zhou Zimo, who was surrounded by black aura. "How is it?" Zhou Zifeng asked. Chu Li replied, "It's fine." He pressed his hand on Zhou Zimo's chest and channeled the cloud slashing power into it. The Shura palms surged over in an attempt to expel it, but were quickly devoured and returned to Chu Li's body in the blink of an eye. Spirit Qi gathered from all directions and revolved around Zhou Zimo's minute pulse cleansing technique a few times. Everyone watched as Zhou Zimo changed rapidly. The black gas faded quickly, revealing his pale face. Then, it slowly turned rosy. His breathing changed from rapid and light to long and slow, and he fell into a deep sleep. Chu Li loosened his grip and nodded. "I'm done." The thin old man quickly checked Zhou Zimo's wrist. Zhou Zifeng reached out to feel it as well. With a smile on his face, he gave a fist salute and said, "Thank you, Chief Chu." Chu Li waved his hand. "It's nothing. You don't have to do this." "Haha, it's nothing to you, Chief Chu, but we're indebted to you for saving our lives." Zhou Zifeng guffawed. "When second younger brother wakes up, I'll have him thank you properly." Chu Li smiled. "Master Xiao Taiying, you're being too serious." The young woman, who had been silent all this while, lowered her head and weeping, suddenly pushed Zhou Zifeng aside and went to the side of the bed. She touched Zhou Zimo's face and leaned over him, weeping tears of joy. Zhou Zifeng smiled awkwardly at Chu Li. "Chief Chu, let's talk outside." Chu Li smiled and nodded. Everyone left, leaving only the young woman to take care of Zhou Zimo. They sat down in the gazebo. Lu Yuanqing smiled. "Chief Chu, you're very familiar with the Shura palm." He was in disbelief when he saw how Chu Li easily neutralized the Shura palm's energy and healed second young master's injuries in the blink of an eye. After all, the High Duke's public house had put in a lot of effort to treat second young master's injuries. All the high officials and masters had tried, but none of them could stop the Shura palm. Chu Li said, "I've dealt with Azura a few times, so I'm familiar with it." "Azura is really scary." Zhou Zifeng sighed. "Second younger brother was almost killed by them this time. We lost 2 protectors. If it weren't for you, Chief Chu, second younger brother's life would have been in danger." Chu Li smiled and shook his head. "I'm afraid father will have to wait for 3 to 4 days. Chief Chu, you can stay in the public house." Zhou Zifeng smiled. It would be unreasonable to ask him to stay outside the public house after saving second younger brother's life. Chu Li smiled. "That would be great. Thank you for your hospitality. Chief Chu is familiar with Azura." "I'd like to ask for some advice," Zhou Zifeng said. He turned to Lu Yuanqing and said, "Arrange a courtyard for Chief Chu." "Yes." Lu Yuanqing fist saluted and stood up. "I'll go make the preparations." As soon as he left, 2 people entered the courtyard. It was a man and a woman. The man was handsome, tall, and had a jade-like complexion. The woman was charming and her eyes were as clear as water. Although she was not as beautiful as Xiao Shi and the others, she was still a rare beauty. "Big brother, how's second older brother?" The handsome man walked forward and asked coldly, "I heard that he's not well?" "Second younger brother is fine." Zhou Zifeng waved. "Come meet Chief Chu Li. He's the one who saved second younger brother." He turned and smiled. "This is my third younger brother, Zhou Ziu." Zhou Ziu fist saluted. "Thank you, Chief Chu." He was handsome, arrogant, and cold. He did not think much of Chu Li. The fist salute was just a perfunctory greeting to Zhou Zifeng. The charming woman curtsied. "I'm Zhou Mei." "Greetings, Chief Chu." Chu Li fist saluted. "Greetings, third madam." "I'll go in and see second older brother," Zhou Ziu said. He brought Zhou Mei into the house. "My third younger brother has always been cold. Please don't take it to heart, Chief Chu." Zhou Zifeng smiled. Chu Li shook his head and looked at their backs thoughtfully. For the next 3 days, Chu Li did not go out at all. He stayed in the courtyard of the G public house and cultivated the all-knowing scripture. He wanted to improve the level of the all-knowing scripture so that he could smell further. During these 3 days, Josephine stayed in the restaurant in G River Valley and sat at a table by the window on the 3rd floor. When the people of the G River Valley passed by the restaurant, they could see Josephine when they raised their heads to look at him. He was leisurely sipping his wine and reading a book. He did not look like an Azura who was about to break into the G River Valley. Although the people were still worried, they were not in a hurry to leave G River Valley. The safest place in the G public house was G River Valley. If G River Valley was not safe, the other places were even worse. Instead of that, it was better to stay in the city. If an Azura appeared, the protectors of the High Duke's public house would not stand idly by. In the evening, Josephine was reading on the 3rd floor of the restaurant when Josiu came over with the charming Jo Mei. "Big brother." He fist saluted. Josephine put down his book and looked up at him. "Third younger brother, why did you leave the house?" "To join in the fun," Josiu said. "When will father return?" "Soon," Josephine said calmly. "You don't have to worry about this. Just stay in the house." "What's up with that Chuli?" Josiu asked. "Do you really treat him as an honored guest?" "He saved second younger brother, so of course he's our benefactor." Josephine nodded. "Why? I think there's something wrong with this Chuli," Josiu scoffed. "The way he looks at Ah Mei is very strange. Does he have some ulterior motives?" Josephine was stunned and then burst out laughing. Josiu scoffed. "Big brother, you don't believe me?" Chapter 726. Josiu was displeased. "Big brother, you don't believe me?" "Third brother, don't think about this all the time. Sister-in-law may be beautiful, but not every man likes her and has ulterior motives towards her." Josephine waved his hand and smiled. As he spoke, he glanced at Jo Mei, who was submissive. Jo Mei seemed to be thinking about something with her head lowered and did not say a word. Josiu frowned. "Big brother, I don't care about the others, but this Chuli is not an ordinary person. If he really has ulterior motives, can we stop him?" Josephine could not help but laugh. He felt that his third brother was crazy to think of such nonsense. He said impatiently, "How dare you think about it? Don't guard your wife all the time. You should do something serious. You're a man, what's the point of being stuck in a pile of rouge?" He glared at him. "Think about it, no matter how beautiful sister-in-law is she prettier than Second Lady Xiao? He stays by Second Lady Xiao's side all the time and his taste has been trained. How could he be tempted by any woman? What a joke. Ah Mei is prettier than Second Lady Xiao. Haha, only you would say that. Sister-in-law is beautiful, but to say she's the best in the Ji dynasty. Alright, go do what you need to do and don't disturb my reading." Josephine waved his hand. "Look at how much hardship your second brother has suffered for the public house." "The public house doesn't belong to me anyway." Josiu pouted. "It belongs to you, big brother. Why should I suffer? I'm not as stupid as second brother." "Who's stupid?" Footsteps were heard as Zimo strode over and slapped the back of his head. "Aren't you stupid because you're such a good-for-nothing?" Josiu cried out in dissatisfaction. "Second brother." Jo Mei curtsied. Zimo whispered, "Father has returned." Why didn't I know?" Josiu exclaimed. Zimo lowered his voice. "Lower your voice." Josephine's expression changed. "Second brother, what happened?" Zimo said, "Big brother, let's go back first." Josephine nodded slowly and his expression returned to normal. He waved his hand. "Third brother, you go back first, I'll leave later." Josiu agreed and hurried downstairs. Jo Mei curtsied and left with Josiu. Josephine stared at her graceful back and shook his head. After all, she was a woman from a small family. She was charming but not refined enough. Only third brother was infatuated with her. How could Chuli like her? Third brother's jealousy was getting stronger and stronger. If this went on, he would really become a good-for-nothing. His father had returned without a sound. Logically speaking, it should have been a big event. However, the current situation required the High Duke to calm the people's hearts. Obviously, something had happened. He calmed his heart and regained his composure. After sitting for another 15 minutes, he got up and slowly walked back. As soon as he reached the mansion, he felt the heavy atmosphere. Lu Yuanqing hurried over and said in a low voice, "The High Duke is injured. Eldest Master, please go and have a look." Injured? Zhou Zifeng frowned and lowered his voice. "What kind of injury?" "Shurapalm," Lu Yuanqing said. Zhou Zifeng nodded slowly and walked inside until he arrived at the High Duke's bedroom. There were more than 10 guards outside. Zhou Zimo and Zhou Ziyu were there. Zhou Mei and second Madame Wan Yi were also there. When he saw Zhou Zifeng enter, Zhou Zimo hurriedly said, "Big brother, father is looking for you." Zhou Zifeng said in a low voice, "Second brother, keep an eye on the inside of the mansion. Don't let any news leak out." "Yes." Zhou Zimo nodded. Zhou Zifeng pushed the door open and entered the room. The light was slightly dim and a short and thin figure was sitting on the bed. White steam was rising from the top of his head and his face was faintly discernible in the white steam. Zhou Zifeng stood in front of the bed and waited quietly without saying a word. The short and thin old man on the bed had a grizzled beard and eyebrows. He looked to be in his 60s. His eyes were slightly closed and his expression was solemn, but his complexion was faintly green. Zhou Zifeng's heart sank. His father's expression was exactly the same as his second brother's. They were both severely injured by the Shurapalm. His second brother had already fainted at this time, but his father's profound skills allowed him to withstand the attack. However, he knew that if this went on, his father would not be able to withstand the Shurapalm. Huff! High Duke Ji Zhouyutian let out a long sigh and opened his eyes. "Father, how are your injuries?" Zhou Zifeng asked. "I won't die yet." Zhouyutian scoffed. Zhou Zifeng asked, "How did you get injured, father?" His father's martial arts was top-notch, and almost no one was a match for him. This was his first time seeing him injured. Zhouyutian shook his head. "I didn't expect these people to be so powerful. I can't beat them." "How many Asuras are there?" "2. They're actually that powerful? This is bad." Zhouyutian muttered. "There are some things that you should know, father," Zhou Zifeng hurriedly said. Zhouyutian waved his hand and said, "This is also the secret of the High Duke's public house. The reason why the High Duke's public house won't betray the Ling family and why the Ling family trusts the 12 High Duke's public houses is because, father, your injuries can be treated." Zhou Zifeng interrupted him. Zhouyutian frowned. "The Shurapalm that I was hit by is different from Zimo's." He had also heard about Chu Li treating Zhou Zimo's injuries. "Why not try? Let Chief Chu take a look at father," Zhou Zifeng said. "Chu Li." Zhouyutian's frown deepened. Zhou Zifeng said, "He's also the chief of the public house." He knew about his father's internal conflict. He hated the Secret Guardians Hall and the Secret Guardians. He's now the Centurion of the Secret Guardians Hall. Zhouyutian scoffed. "You have to be careful of the people from the Secret Guardians Hall. They're all rats who can't accomplish anything but are good at spoiling things." "Father, let's treat your injuries first," Zhou Zifeng said. The Chu Li that he saw was not as despicable. As a guest, he was very self-aware and stayed in the small courtyard. He did not wander around and was well-behaved, which saved him a lot of trouble. The Chu Li that he thought was well-behaved was sitting on the bed, deep in thought. He saw what appeared in Zhouyutian's mind and came to a sudden realization. No wonder the 12 High Dukes' public houses would not betray them. The High Duke's medallion of the 12 High Dukes' public houses was compatible with the Emperor's gold medallion. When the 13 medallions were combined and a unique technique was activated, one could ascend to the Outland. Stepping into the Grandmaster's boundary was equivalent to becoming a celestial being with a lifespan of 10,000 years. If one were to reincarnate after their decline, they would still be blessed and intelligent. This was a supreme temptation for those who had reached the end of their lifespan. The matters of the secular world were insignificant. Then let's give it a try. Zhou Yutian scoffed. Zhou Zifeng soon arrived at Chu Li's small courtyard. Chu Li came out of his bedroom and opened the courtyard door. Zhou Zifeng sincerely asked Chu Li for help and Chu Li readily agreed. He followed Zhou Zifeng to Zhou Yutian's courtyard. Everyone in the courtyard stared at him and watched him enter the house. Then, no sound could be heard. Chu Li entered the bedroom and fist saluted. Greetings, High Duke Zhou. Chu Li, help me see if you can treat it. Zhou Yutian waved his hand. Chu Li went forward and placed his hand on his wrist. He smiled. High Duke, aren't you afraid that I have ill intentions? The monk can run but the temple can't. What am I afraid of? Zhou Yutian scoffed. Chapter 727. As soon as he finished speaking, he channeled his inner energy into the cloud-slashing power to devour the Shura Palm's force. This Asura is also a powerful character. His Shura Palm's level of attainment is very high. Zhou Yutian scoffed. It's an old man who knows how many people he's killed. When he thought of the two Asuras, he had goosebumps all over his body. Chu Li said, High Duke, you're lucky to be alive. It's not one Asura, is it? Two, Zhou Yutian replied. Bad luck, both of them are old men. Your heart technique is strange. Chu Li nodded and glanced at Zhou Zifeng. I'd like to speak to High Duke in private, young master, all right. Zhou Zifeng nodded and left the bedroom. Zhou Yutian looked at Chu Li and smiled playfully. What do you want to say? Chu Li said, High Duke, don't you think it's strange? What's strange? Don't you think it's too much of a coincidence, High Duke? Why did all the Asuras come to the G public house? And ambush the High Duke? What are you trying to say? It's the secret Guardian's Hall again, isn't it? Zhou Yutian frowned and scoffed. High Duke, do you know about the Divine Church of Asura? Divine Church of Asura? Zhou Yutian scoffed. I've never heard of it. The secret Guardian's Hall might not be good at other things, but they were well informed. Chu Li said, There's a Moonfall Peak near the Tempest Temple. Asuras from all over the world gather at the Moonfall Peak. It's a holy place for Asuras to cultivate. More than 100 Asuras have gathered there to form the Divine Church of Asura. The Tempest Temple has set up a formation to suppress them, but the Holy Church of Light has interfered. What a mess! Zhou Yutian scoffed. He did not like these people. He could not wait for them to bite each other. Chu Li said, The Holy Church of Light has a secret skill that allows them to tame Asuras and turn them into guardian warriors. In the end, the Holy Church of Light managed to obtain 20 top-notch Asura masters. Other than these 20, there were another 20 or so who managed to escape. High Duke, do you think the Asura you met were the ones who escaped or the Holy Church of Light's Asura? Zhou Yutian's face darkened, and he remained silent. Chu Li replied, High Duke, after you left, an old Asura came to Ji River Valley. He was lured away by a young man named Chu Lingfeng, which prevented a massacre. All of you should thank this Chu Lingfeng, but I don't know if he's dead or alive. Zhou Yutian frowned. Chu Li said, Based on their actions, it's obvious that they have ulterior motives. It's not just to kill. I'm sure the High Duke can guess their identity. So what if I know? Zhou Yutian said in a deep voice. After Chu Li's detailed explanation, he also felt that something was not right. Chu Li said, A while ago, a minister-counselor from the Ministry of War rebelled. He was a disciple of the Holy Church of Light and was involved in 2 assassinations. The murderer of the first assassination was hiding in Ji River Valley, and I was the one who captured him. Zhou Yutian snorted. Arresting someone in the Ji River Valley was equivalent to barging into one's own house and arresting someone. This made him feel extremely resentful. Chu Li said, "The Secret Guardians Hall suspects that the Ji Public House is harboring a disciple of the Holy Church of Light and has connections with the Holy Church of Light." Bullsh *T. Zhou Yutian sneered. "Tell this to the Emperor and see if the Emperor will believe you." "Not to mention the Emperor, even I don't believe it," Chu Li shook his head. "That's why I requested to investigate this matter. Unfortunately, due to my sensitive identity, the commander stopped me from doing so and sent Centurion Chen Donghai from Mei Yi Courtyard instead. I only came here after he suffered a setback." He recounted the entire incident in detail from the beginning to the end. He understood that only sincerity was persuasive and the truth could move people's hearts. No matter how extravagant a lie was, it would only backfire when faced with a sly old fox like the Ji Public House. "You believe the Ji Public House?" "Of course. Since you believe me, what's there to investigate? You can just go back." Chu Li shook his head. "I don't doubt the loyalty of the Ji Public House, but I suspect that there's something wrong with them. Looking at the High Duke's encounter, I can conclude that my speculation is correct." "What speculation?" Zhou Yutian scoffed. Chu Li said, "There's a spy from the Holy Church of Light in the Ji Public House." "Nonsense," Zhou Yutian blurted out. He then shook his head and said in a low voice, "Impossible." Chu Li smiled. "I've been here for 3 days and it's not like I've done nothing. I can roughly tell who the spy is." "Who?" "The third madam, Zhou Mei. Zhou Mei has a clean background and doesn't know martial arts." Chu Li said, "The Holy Church of Light has a secret skill that can conceal martial arts. If they could hide it from the high officials of the Imperial House in Fairy's capital, what more the High Duke's public house? What evidence do you have?" "It's actually easy to get evidence. As long as we find someone to assassinate her, she will naturally reveal her martial art." "It's not that easy. You don't dare to try, High Duke." Zhou Yutian remained silent. Chu Li said, "High Duke, I actually have an idea." Zhou Yutian raised his head. "If you want to use this to threaten me, you've found the wrong person." Chu Li withdrew his hand. "I'm done." Zhou Yutian felt his body relax and felt refreshed. He scoffed. "Thank you." Chu Li said, "It's nothing. Why don't we beat them at their own game?" "You're thinking of using an insider? Why would the Holy Church of Light deliberately plot against you, High Duke?" "Who knows?" Zhou Yutian scoffed. Chu Li said, "As long as they have a request, then it's easy. If High Duke pretends to be seriously injured and the people's hearts are in chaos, I'm sure the Holy Church of Light will come looking for you. When that time comes, we'll give them a thunderous blow." "You're really daring." Zhou Yutian shook his head. "It's easier said than done. Not to mention that the protectors of the High Duke's public house can't handle those Azuras. Don't let them beat us at our own game." Chu Li smiled. "The public house still has manpower. I'll get a few more. It won't be a problem to gather 20 grandmasters." Zhou Yutian narrowed his eyes and looked at him deeply. Chu Li said, "It seems like High Duke doesn't trust me." He understood Zhou Yutian's worries. 20 grandmasters could almost destroy the Ji Public House. Even if they could protect it, it would be a huge blow to their vitality. "Why should I trust you?" Zhou Yutian scoffed. Chu Li smiled bitterly and nodded. "That's true. Then it depends on High Duke's decision." He knew that Zhou Yutian would accept his suggestion. This was his personality and it could not be changed. After a while, Zhou Yutian broke the silence. "All right, I can give it a try." Zhou Yutian scoffed. "But if these masters are injured or killed, the High Duke's public house will not be responsible." Chu Li nodded. "Of course. When can you get them here?" 5 days is enough," Chu Li said. "Then I'll delay it for 5 days." Zhou Yutian scoffed. "I'll show them what I'm capable of." I, Haiduke-ji, am not that easy to deal with. Chu Fist saluted. Then I'll make my move immediately. Haiduke, you have to act more realistically. You can't reveal even your closest relatives. This Zhou Mei is a powerful person. She can see through the clues. Don't let her see through you. Chapter 728. P.S. Update complete. Chu pushed the door open and walked out of the house. Zhou Zifeng quickly went up to him. Chief Chu, how is it? Chu sighed and shook his head. Chief Chu, could it be that my father's injury? Zhou Zifeng's expression changed. Chu glanced at the crowd and sighed. The High Duke's injury is different from second young master's. They're both Shura palms, what's the difference? Zhou Zimo asked. It should be a piece of cake for you, Chief Chu, right? Second young master, you flatter me. Chu shook his head and smiled bitterly. I don't have such great abilities. It still depends on the cultivation level of the person who did it. The Azura who injured second young master and the High Duke cannot be mentioned in the same breath. The difference in their cultivation levels is like heaven and earth. I am far inferior to him. If that's the case, Zhou Ziyu said coldly, you can't cure him? Chu shook his head. Forgive my incompetence, young masters, I'm truly sorry. Zhou Zifeng asked, is there no other way? Perhaps the High Duke's cultivation level is high enough to suppress the Shura palm, Chu said. He then sighed. The Shura palm gets more powerful as it goes on, it's like a rolling snowball, it's better for everyone to be prepared. Prepared for what? Zhou Ziyu asked. Chu glanced at Zhou Zifeng and smiled bitterly. Eldest young master is still young, I'm afraid he'll have to shoulder a heavy burden. Could it be that father? Zhou Zifeng said, it's not that serious. Chu shook his head and said no more. Young masters, I'm tired too, I'd like to go back and rest. Thank you, Chief Chu. Zhou Zifeng Fist saluted. Chu said apologetically, it's my fault for not being able to help, eldest young master. It's also father's fate. Zhou Zifeng shook his head bitterly. Chu Fist saluted everyone and strode away. Zhou Ziyu scoffed. I don't think this fellow really wanted to help. He could have helped but didn't want to. Third brother. Zhou Zimo scoffed. Don't say that. Second brother, don't side with him just because he saved your life, he came with ill intentions. Zhou Ziyu said. If he could really help, why wouldn't he? Zhou Zimo scoffed. Is the favor from the House of High Dukes not worth mentioning? What kind of grudge does he have against the House of High Duke? Who knows? Zhou Ziyu said lightly. Zhou Mei quickly tugged at his sleeve. Zhou Ziyu curled his lips and did not say anything else. Zhou Zimo glared at him angrily and slowly turned his head. Zhou Zifeng said absent-mindedly, I'll go in and take a look. He pushed open the door and entered the room. The people outside also calmed down. They all knew that if anything were to happen to the High Duke, the one who would be hurt the most would be their eldest brother. Eldest brother had the deepest relationship with father, and once father was gone, eldest brother would have to shoulder the burden of the High Duke. It was not an easy task. Both of them did not have the intention to fight for the position. Being a High Duke seemed to be glorious, but in fact there were no benefits at all. As the young masters of the High Duke's public house, they knew very well that being a young master was the most comfortable. There was no need to worry, and they were carefree and happy. A moment later, Zhou Zifeng raised his voice and said, Everyone, come in. Everyone entered the bedroom and saw Zhou Yutian's pale face. Zhou Yutian's face was haggard and he seemed to have aged a few years. His eyes were dull and lifeless as he glanced at everyone. They felt a chill run down their spines when he looked at them. It was a pair of eyes filled with despair. Father, are you all right? Zhou Zimo quickly asked. You don't look well. Zhou Yutian said plainly, I might have to leave first. All of you must assist eldest brother well in the future. Don't just think about playing around, especially third brother. It's time for you to put in some effort for the House of High Duke. Yes, father. Zhou Ziyu nodded. He was very reluctant, but he did not want to go against his father's wishes at this time. Zhou Yutian said, "All of you go, I'll be alone for a while." "Father, I'll accompany you," Zhou Zifeng said hurriedly. Zhou Yutian shook his head. "No need, go and do what you need to do." "What about the Ji River Valley?" Zhou Zifeng asked. "The people are already in a state of panic. They're afraid that once news of your injury spreads, father, they'll be even more afraid that the Ji River Valley will become an empty city." "I'll take a stroll outside," Zhou Yutian said. "I'll temporarily calm the people down." Zhou Zimo asked the question that everyone had been avoiding. "Father, if more Asuras come, what will we do?" Zhou Yutian looked at him and said slowly, "I have an old friend in the Tempest Temple. Third brother, help me send a letter to him and ask him to bring the masters from the Tempest Temple here to help. The Tempest Temple cares about the Asuras the most." "Yes." Zhou Ziyu nodded. "I'll write it now." Zhou Yutian untied his legs and walked to the desk with Zhou Zifeng's help. Zhou Mei had already ground the ink and laid out the plain paper. Zhou Yutian's right hand was trembling as he held the brush, causing the three Zhou brothers to feel sad. Although their father was not tall, he had a strong cultivation level and had always been a hero. He had never shown such a weak side before. Zhou Yutian wrote the letter with difficulty. His forehead was already covered in a layer of sweat and he was extremely weak. He gestured to Zhou Mei to pack the letter and said to Zhou Ziyu, "Third brother, I can't hold on for too long. 5 days, at most 5 days. You must deliver the letter within 2 days. You must travel day and night." "Yes," Zhou Ziyu said in a low voice. Zhou Yutian returned to his bed and was already panting heavily. He waved his hand. "Go, all of you go. Let me have some peace and quiet." "Yes." Everyone bowed respectfully and slowly left. Once Zhou Ziyu returned to his courtyard, he asked Zhou Mei to pack up and leave with his bag. This was a critical moment for the High Duke's public house. He did not have time to be lovey-dovey. Zhou Mei looked at his back and sighed faintly. Not long after Zhou Ziyu left the Ji River Valley, he suddenly encountered 4 grandmasters. He was then captured and the letter was taken away. He was then brought to a small courtyard in the Ji River Valley. His acupuncture point was sealed and he could not move. He could only watch as time passed. 1 day, 2 days, 3 days, until it was 5 days. Although his acupuncture point was sealed, he still had a trace of consciousness. He knew that the number of people staying in this courtyard was slowly increasing. People kept coming and finally it stopped at 30. On the night of the 5th day, these 30 grandmasters snuck out of the courtyard and disappeared into the night. Zhou Ziyu knew that these people were going for the High Duke's public house. His heart was filled with despair. 30 grandmasters. Just the thought of it was enough to make one's heart tremble. The High Duke's public house definitely did not have the power to fight back. They had destroyed the High Duke's public house, so they would certainly not let him live. In the end, he would also have to accompany the people of the High Duke's public house on the road to hell. He did not know when these people would return. The moment they returned, it would mean that the battle was over, the High Duke's public house was destroyed, and he would also be on the road to hell. Since the establishment of the Great Ji dynasty, the High Duke's public house had never been destroyed. The Ji public house would be the first. When he thought of this, he felt angry. He hated himself for being lazy in the past and not cultivating properly. Now, he could only watch the High Duke's public house being destroyed without being able to help. Not only could he not help, but he had also made things worse. If it was someone else who went to the Tempest Temple, the reinforcements from the Tempest Temple might have already arrived. Chapter 729. Ji Public House. Zhou Zifeng's deep voice suddenly came from the High Duke's bedroom. "Father! Father!" Zhou Zimo's voice was heard too, revealing his sorrow. The protectors and the womenfolk in the small courtyard were shocked. They knew that the High Duke had probably breathed his last. The pillar of the public house had collapsed, and they could not help but feel sad. They did not know what would happen to the public house in the future. Zhou Zifeng slowly walked out of the main hall with a solemn expression. He glanced at everyone. Elder Lu, go and make arrangement. I'm afraid that once the news gets out, some people will take the opportunity to stir up trouble. Yes, eldest master, I'll have all the protectors return to the public house. Zhou Zifeng nodded slowly and sighed. Everyone, this is a time of life and death for the public house. We must work together to survive this. First, uncle, is father-in-law? Zhou Mei asked with concern. Zhou Zifeng sighed and shook his head. Father-in-law's divine power is unparalleled. Is he going to die just like that? Zhou Mei hurriedly asked. Zhou Zifeng said, the Shura palm is too vicious and overbearing. There's no cure for it. Father has been trying his best to resist it, but in the end, he couldn't. Sigh. He can finally rest now. It's a relief. Sigh. Zhou Mei let out a faint sigh. The heavens do not give me a false new year. Second Mistress Wani said, I'll go in and help father-in-law pack up. Zhou Zifeng shook his head. There's no need. When third brother returns, we'll send father to the High Duke's shrine. Why isn't youngest uncle back yet? Wani frowned and scoffed. He must have been delayed again. It's been 5 days and the people from the Tempest Temple still haven't arrived. Zhou Zifeng said, third brother knows what's important. Wani said, he doesn't have much experience. I'm afraid he can't do it well even if he wants to. We still have to rely on ourselves. Zhou Zifeng said, stay in your rooms tonight. I think someone will take the opportunity to break into the public house. We'll show them what we're made of. Yes. The ladies nodded. Let's go in and see father-in-law. Zhou Mei said. We can't not see him for the last time. Let's go in. Zhou Zifeng nodded. The two women entered the house lightly. When they arrived at the bedroom, they saw Zhou Zimo crying. When he saw them enter, he quickly wiped his tears away. Zhou Mei came to the front of the bed and gently caressed High Duke Ji's cold hand. She sighed and retreated. Wani only took a glance and shook her head. They retreated gracefully, leaving only the three of them in the room. High Duke Ji, Zhou Yutian immediately stood up and said in a low voice, Zhou Mei really knows martial arts. Chu Li suddenly appeared in the house. Zhou Yutian asked, Chu Li, how are the reinforcements coming along? Chu Li said, the masked men in white are our people. There's a group of them outside the back door now. Young master, please invite them in. Okay, go ahead, Zhou Yutian said. Zhou Zifeng nodded and got up to leave. Chu Li said, the High Duke will stay in the public house, I will be in the town. All right. Zhou Yutian nodded slowly and said, thank you. Chu Li gave a fist salute and disappeared in a flash. Zhou Zimo frowned. Father. He was a little worried that if the Holy Church of Light was defeated, the Ji public house would take the opportunity to occupy it. He had to be careful as the human heart was unpredictable. At this point, we can only take a gamble. Zhou Yutian scoffed. Zhou Zimo nodded helplessly. A bright moon hung in the sky. Its moonlight was like water illuminating the Ji public house in a mysterious and serene manner. Suddenly, 22 masked men in black rushed out of the main street of Ji River Valley. Their feet seemed to carry a gust of wind as they swept across the street like smoke. They rushed into the public house through the main entrance, followed by a series of shouts. Bam 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 bam! The muffled sounds of the grandmasters fighting were so loud that it broke the peace of the Ji public house. The people in Ji River Valley could vaguely hear the commotion at the public house, but no one dared to come out and take a look. The people in Ji River Valley calmed down. When the High Duke returned to the public house, he would go around the town every day. When the people saw High Duke Ji, they also calmed down. When the 22 masked men in black rushed in to take a look, they realized that they had fallen into a trap. 44 masked men in white were waiting for them. It was 2 against 1, but most of them had the upper hand. These masked men in white were all grandmasters. 6 masked men in black faced the siege of 2, but not only were they not at a disadvantage, they even had the upper hand. Soon, they had an overwhelming advantage. Suddenly, 4 of the masked men in white abandoned their companions and rushed over. Their companions stayed behind to deal with their opponents, but they were not at a disadvantage. The situation quickly reached a stalemate, and the balance was maintained. High Duke Ji stood on the rooftop and looked down at the battle below. He shouted in a deep voice, "Where did you come from? My Ji public house is not a place where you can behave atrociously." When the 22 masked men in black saw High Duke Ji standing majestically on the rooftop, they immediately knew that they had been tricked. Their spy must have been discovered and had deliberately lured them here so that they would be surrounded. However, they did not panic. Even if it was 1 against 2, if they really wanted to retreat, they would be able to rely on their secret skills. They had to reap enough benefits before they left. The 2 groups of people fought back and forth in a stalemate. None of them fell. Grandmasters were surprisingly resilient. Without an overwhelming advantage, it was difficult to defeat the other party in a short period of time. The masked men in white were very agile. Once they realized that their opponents were weak, they would leave one behind to deal with them while the other went to support their companions. In just a few moves, they were able to suppress their opponents, turning their advantage in numbers into an advantage in the overall situation. High Duke Ji leaped down and formed a fist in the air. He attacked the masked man in black, who was being surrounded by 5 masked men in white. The masked man in black was tall and slender. Faced with High Duke Ji's fist, he suddenly dodged and narrowly avoided it. The fist force almost hit the masked man in white. Taking advantage of the opportunity when the masked man in white dodged the fist force, he instantly struck out several palms like a ghost. Suddenly, there was a muffled bang from his body. Then, his eyes shot out a red light that seemed to pierce through the 5 people. "Azura!" High Duke Ji shouted and floated forward. "Leave it to me. Go and help the others." Bam 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 bam. His fists and palms collided more than 10 times in an instant. Neither of them retreated. They fought from the courtyard to the roof, and from the roof to the courtyard. They had already reached the courtyard of the side hall. "Humph, do you think that you can lure me away?" High Duke Ji laughed coldly as he punched. A clear whistle rang out from a restaurant in the Ji River Valley, echoing through the night sky. Number 1. 5 masked men in white emerged from a restaurant not far from the High Duke's public house. Like 5 wisps of smoke, they rushed into the public house in the blink of an eye and shot towards the masked man in black, who had the upper hand. In the blink of an eye, the situation was reversed. These 5 people's martial arts far surpassed the protectors of the public house. Once they joined the fray, the masked men in white immediately suppressed the masked men in black. One of the masked men raised his voice and shouted, "Attack!" 2 slender figures shot out from a small courtyard. They were dressed in black and carried torches as they rushed towards High Duke Ji's study. It was obvious that they were women. The clear whistle rang out again. Number 2. Chapter 730. They took off the masks of the 2 men in black and revealed their faces. They were Zhou Mei and her maid. Zhou Mei pursed her red lips and glared at the 2 men in white, wanting to know their identities. The 2 men in white shook their heads and sealed their acupuncture points. Then, they threw them into the study room and glided toward the main courtyard where the battle was taking place. Bang 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 bang. The addition of the 2 men in black was like the straw that broke the camel's back. Instantly, more and more men in black fell. Their acupuncture points were sealed and their martial arts were crippled before they were thrown aside. One of the men in black let out another long whistle. The whistle shook the entire Ji River Valley. Masked men in black shot out from 6 different places in the Ji River Valley. Some came from the residential courtyards, the big mansions, the restaurants, the brothels, and even one from the town defense prefecture. All of them were masked with black masks. Like 6 wisps of smoke, they swept past the houses and entered the G public house. The arrival of the 6 men stabilized the situation. The man in black who let out the whistle was annoyed. He had been too careless. Originally, he had a spy who had a clear understanding of the G public house's strength. 22 men and 2 spies were more than enough to take down the G public house without suffering any losses. He had also arranged for 6 martial arts masters in the city to create chaos and confuse the enemy. If he had known this would happen, he would have gathered everyone and moved out at the same time to crush the G public house with the force of a flash flood. However, it was too late for regrets now. Their spirit had been dampened, and they did not have the sharpness to take down the G public house in one go. It was as if they had sunk into a swamp. If they continued like this, they would only sink deeper and deeper. They had no choice but to send out the 6 backup martial arts masters. Another clear whistle sounded above the restaurant. Number 3. 8 masked men in white rushed out of the restaurant. Their heads and faces were covered, only revealing a pair of eyes that shone brightly. They strode forward, covering more than 10 meters with each step. In a few steps, they arrived at the G public house and met the 6 men. These 8 men had profound cultivation levels. Their palm energy was fierce and overbearing. They suppressed the 6 men in a few moves. They did not evade the attacks of the men in black. Their bodies flashed with a faint purple light. Every move they made sought to injure both sides. After more than 10 moves, the 6 men were taken down. Their acupuncture points were sealed and their martial arts were crippled. They were thrown aside and ignored. The 6 high and mighty grandmasters lay on the ground in despair. 8 masked men in white rushed into the field. The situation of the black-clothed man changed again, and the situation became even more difficult. After a few breaths, 2 more people fell. Only 14 people were left standing, and these 14 people were also in imminent danger. A clear and bright voice rang out, "Be careful, they're trying to escape. They're using their secret techniques." As soon as his voice fell, bang, 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 a series of muffled sounds rang out from the masked man's body. Some of them seemed to be burning with flames, and their auras were raging. Some of them had eyes that emitted red light, as if they were corporeal. They immediately turned the situation around. However, they were immediately suppressed as the people surrounding them used their secret techniques at the same time. Amit Ba. Sanskrit chants came from the sky. The 10 masked men in white glowed with a gentle light. Their movements were slow, and their opponents' movements were slow as well. It was as if they were sending themselves to be beaten. Bang! Bang! 4 masked men in black were knocked down. Boom! 5 masked men in white struck out with their palms like thunder. Their blood was boiling, and they could not dodge the lightning-fast palms. Screech! 2 of the masked men in white seemed to have transformed into 2 spirit cranes. Their movements were graceful, but they were extremely fast. Suddenly, a ball of light condensed in the night sky. It was brighter than the moon. This ball of light suddenly condensed and turned into a door of light that stood in the night sky. It was magnificent. One of the masked men in black suddenly disappeared and turned into a white light that shot into the sky. He stopped in front of the door of light and turned into a human figure. He turned his head to look down and then stepped into the door of light. Another white light shot into the sky and appeared in front of the door of light. He turned his head to look at the people below and then stepped into the door of light. The door of light slowly disappeared into the night sky. The people of G River Valley looked melancholy. Many people knelt down and looked pious as they exclaimed in admiration. Someone had ascended to heaven. They had truly succeeded in their cultivation and ascended to heaven. Let's go! With a shout, one of the masked men in black suddenly rushed towards his comrade. He endured a few palm strikes and arrived next to another man in black. Then, he gave him a fierce push. Bam! He exploded with a bang. His corpse was nowhere to be seen. The four masked men in white who had surrounded his comrade emitted a soft light and were surrounded by Sanskrit chant. After being blown up by the masked man in black, a purple light flashed. Finally, the purple light broke and they took 2 steps back. Then, the soft light flashed and quickly moved around their bodies. Chu Li stood on the roof of the restaurant with Fa Yuan and Lu Yurong beside him. Fa Yuan pressed his palms together. His bald head shone brightly under the moonlight. Lu Yurong wore a white veil that covered her charming face. Only her limpid eyes could be seen. She quietly observed the battle in the Ji public house. Chu Li turned to look at Fa Yuan and Lu Yurong. He smiled. The disciples of the Holy Church of Light are indeed not afraid of death. Fa Yuan pressed his palms together. Chu Li smiled. The secret skill of the Tempest Temple is indeed unique. It can actually block this move. I've experienced the power of this move. It's really scary. Fa Yuan said. Senior brother Fa Xiang and the others have very high cultivation levels. Their secret skills are greatly affected by their cultivation levels. We have to get busy now. Chu Li pointed at the man in black who had escaped from the public house. Miss Lu, he's an acquaintance of ours. He put his arm around Lu Yurong's waist and suddenly disappeared. He appeared in front of the masked man in black and smiled. Priest, why are you running away so pathetically? The masked man in black swung his arm and punched with his left fist. A flash of light shot towards Chu Li at lightning speed. Chu Li dodged it and smiled. Time blade alone won't be enough. Lu Yurong attacked with her palm and hit the divine light fist. He took a step back. His white robe fluttered as if he was standing in a strong wind. His eyes were bright. He was very satisfied with the results of his isolated cultivation. His martial arts had improved greatly. He could actually block the divine light fist. Fa Yuan floated over and chanted the name of Buddha. Chu Li said, Guardian priest of the Holy Church of Light, Fang Qingyang. Fa Yuan, if we can make him stay, the Holy Church of Light will be greatly weakened. Alright. Fa Yuan nodded slowly. A sound of Sanskrit came from the sky and a soft light fell on him. Fa Yuan's expression was solemn and his eyes were compassionate as he looked at Fang Qingyang. Chu Li's heavenly demonic orb was already at his precordium. Endless energy rolled through his body. A flash of light from the sky fell on Lu Yurong and slowly entered her body. She was like a piece of white jade that glowed brilliantly. The light flowed like water. She was like a celestial being who did not belong to the mortal world. Bang! Chu Li suddenly stepped in front of Fang Qingyang. A flash of light flew out from his waist and turned into a cold light that reached Fang Qingyang's throat at an incredible speed. Fang Qingyang dodged sideways. He had used the secret technique of divine light. His body movement technique became incredibly fast and his reaction was shocking. Lu Yurong and Fa Yuan attacked at the same time. One was a fierce and overbearing diamond palm, while the other was a een and cold Empyrean fairy palm. Fang Qingyang did not fight them head-on. His body moved like a flash of light and he escaped again. Chu Li appeared in a flash and blocked his way. Bang bang bang! Fang Qingyang only used the divine light fist to attack from afar. He did not dare to compete with his inner energy. Otherwise, if he was entangled, he would not be able to handle the other 2 top-notch masters. Chu Li appeared behind him in a flash and hit him with his palm. Fang Qingyang twisted his body to avoid it and turned into a flash of light that shot away again. Chu Li frowned. Fang Qingyang, who had activated his secret technique and was focused on escaping, was very difficult to deal with. He glanced at the Ji public house and shook his head helplessly. Forget it, let him go. Fa Yuan and Lu Yurong did not understand but did not refuse. They watched as Fong Qingyang escaped and turned into a flash of light that disappeared. Chu Li said in a low voice, "Getting rid of that guy is the right thing to do." Chapter 731. Fa Yuan chanted, Amit Ba Lu Yurong frowned too. This Azura's cultivation level was much higher than any of them. Now that he had used his secret skill, none of them could block it. 3 of them had to work together. Chu Li stepped in front of the Azura and pointed a finger at him. Use petrifying finger. Lu Yurong's body movement technique was extremely fast. She arrived behind the Azura and attacked with her palm. The Azura attacked with both of his palms. His palm energy was firm and blocked Chu Li's finger. His eyes glowed red, but his movements were still fast. Lu Yurong's palm energy collided with his, and she took a step back. The Azura's body suddenly moved and dodged Fa Yuan's petrifying finger. Chu Li already had the nature restoration manifestation and the omniscient mirror to help him. He had predicted that the Azura would dodge this attack. He took the opportunity to punch the Azura. The Azura took 3 steps back and his body stopped. Fa Yuan's petrifying finger had hit him. Chu Li punched again and hit him again. Lu Yurong's palm also hit his back. Chu Li's nature restoration manifestation and omniscient mirror, Fa Yuan's petrifying finger, and Lu Yurong's Empyrean fairy palm were all top-notch martial arts. With Chu Li's coordination, the 3 of them worked together seamlessly. This Azura's cultivation level was higher than the 3 of them. His body movement technique was also extremely fast, but he still could not withstand it. Fa Yuan's petrifying finger was originally difficult to activate, but now that he had used his secret skill, the petrifying finger became much easier. The Azura wanted to dodge, but Chu Li predicted it and blocked him with his fist. This caused the Azura's body movement technique to pause, and he was hit by the petrifying finger. As soon as the petrifying finger hit, Lu Yurong and Chu Li's fist and palm followed. Before the Azura could catch his breath, Fa Yuan's other petrifying finger fell. The 3 of them worked together seamlessly and hit the Azura more than 20 times in one breath. The Azura was powerless to resist. If it was not for the Azura's strong body, he would have fallen in just a few moves. The sword at Chu Li's waist flashed and slashed the Azura's throat. The Azura tried to dodge but failed to avoid Chu Li's spear finger from his left hand. The Azura's eyes flickered and a red light flashed. Fa Yuan's petrifying finger landed again, and Chu Li followed up with another spear finger strike. The red glow in the Azura's eyes flashed again. Chu Li seized the opportunity and pressed his palm against the Azura's palm. He activated the cloud slashing power and pressed his palms against the Azura's. They were going to compete in inner energy. Bam! The Azura took the hit head-on. He did not want to compete with Chu Li in inner energy and staggered backward. Lu Yurong's Empyrean fairy palm landed on his shoulder, and Fa Yuan's petrifying finger struck again. Bang! Azura staggered and spat out a mouthful of blood. The power of Lu Yurong's Empyrean fairy palm was beyond imagination. Chu Li's sword flashed. Just as Fa Yuan's petrifying finger was about to hit the Azura, the sword flashed past his legs. The Azura groaned and knelt on the ground in disbelief. The Azura's body was strong. Usually, even the Modesty sword would not be able to hurt him. However, the petrifying finger gave him an opportunity. When the petrifying finger hit him, his vital energy froze and could not protect his body. As the Azura knelt on the ground, Lu Yurong hit him on the back, right behind his heart. His body froze instantly. Fa Yuan used the spear finger strike. Pft! The Azura spat out a mouthful of blood. Chu Li quickly went forward and sealed his acupuncture point. Then, he cut the tendons in his hands and let out a long sigh of relief. This is a powerful fellow. Fa Yuan nodded slowly. The 3 of them withdrew their secret skills and returned to normal. They looked at each other. They all felt a sense of contentment, an indescribable sense of joy. The battle was finally over. Other than Fong Qingyang, who had escaped, the others did not escape. Their martial arts were crippled, their acupuncture points sealed, and they were thrown to the ground. There were a total of 27 people. After defeating these people, the masked man in white quickly retreated. His footsteps were silent. They were all trying to guess the identities of their companions. The Ji public house regained its peace. Zhou Mei and the maids were left in the study. Chu Li did not bring them out in consideration of the High Duke's public house's reputation. Chu Li and High Duke Ji stood in front of the main hall and looked at the men in black on the ground. The black scarves on their faces had been removed, revealing their true faces. They could see that there were 10 Azuras. The rest were mostly middle-aged and old men. High Duke, I'll be taking these fellows with me. Chu Li pointed at the 10 Azuras and shook his head. Tonight's incident should have been handled in a low-key manner. Don't let anyone know and don't spread the news. I know. Zhou Yutian nodded slowly and sighed. The Holy Church of Light really thinks highly of me. Chu Li smiled. I guess they won't dare to mess around again. I'm just afraid that they won't give up and will try to get back at us. Zhou Yutian shook his head. Chu Li said, if they come again, I won't just stand by and do nothing. Let's show them what we're made of. Zhou Yutian smiled. I've been waiting for you to say that. Chu Li chuckled. This time, it's all thanks to your cooperation, High Duke. It's a pity that the priest from the Holy Church of Light ran away. It's good that he ran away, Zhou Yutian said. If we really kill a priest, the Holy Church of Light won't rest until we're dead. Chu Li nodded. I won't ask you where you got so many martial arts masters from. Zhou Yutian took out an iron tag and handed it to Chu Li. This is the waist tag of the High Duke's public house. If you need anything, you can use this tag to command the disciples of the public house within the boundaries of the public house. Chu Li took it and smiled. Thank you, High Duke. Zhou Yutian said, I can't thank you enough. If it wasn't for you this time, the public house would have been finished. I would have become a sinner of the Zhou clan and would have been too ashamed to face my ancestors. Chu Li smiled and said nothing. If it wasn't for his help this time and the gathering of so many martial arts masters, High Duke Ji would have been dead. He was a little shocked. The Holy Church of Light was becoming more and more unscrupulous. They actually gathered more than 20 grandmasters in one go and wanted to destroy a public house. This was something beyond imagination. In people's minds, no matter how strong the Holy Church of Light was, they would not dare to do such a thing. Yet they did. Chu Li had already read their minds and knew that they wanted to steal the High Duke's badge. The Holy Church of Light's wild ambition shocked him. I'll tell the Secret Guardians Hall that there was no such thing with the Holy Church of Light, Chu Li said. Zhou Yutian sighed. I owe you a favor. Chu Li said, to the Secret Guardians Hall, this matter is over. It's not that important whether there's a traitor or not. If there's nothing else, I'll take my leave first. All right, stay for a while when you have time next time. Zhou Yutian smiled. Let Zifeng learn from you. Chu Li smiled and shook his head. He gave a fist salute and glided away. Zhou Yutian sighed as he watched him disappear. With such a person around, Zifeng was really unfortunate. His light was dim. The 10 Azuras were sent to a restaurant by Zhou Yutian's men. Chu Li divided the 10 Azuras into 6, 3, and 1. The Tempest Temple took 6, the Amethyst Mountain took 3, and the Green Deer Cliff took 1 in exchange for 12 adversity-surpassing pills, 6 amethyst pills, and 2 primary heaven pills. These spirit pills and the 20 bottles of fortifying pills from the G Public House were all given to the E Public House, Ren Public House, and Huai Public House. They were divided equally according to the number of masters. Everyone quietly left the G Public House in silence. Other than the people involved, almost no one knew about this great battle. Chu Li bid farewell to everyone and returned to Qingyun town. Xiao Shi was reading and admiring the flowers in the courtyard while he cultivated the all-knowing scripture in his house. He also checked on the progress of the nature restoration manifestation and realized that the progress was much greater than he imagined. It seemed that fighting with the Asuras was indeed beneficial to the progress of the nature restoration manifestation. He had to find more in the future and cultivate the all-knowing scripture. He cultivated for 2 days in one go. On the third day, he returned to the Secret Guardians Hall. The Secret Guardians Hall was as usual. There were no changes. He went to May Air Courtyard. Qin Jin and the others had already returned and were cultivating in the martial arts field. He waved his hand to indicate that they did not have to stop and went to the main hall. Yang Zhongwen followed him in and reported the news from the fairy's capital. Chen Donghai had recovered from his injuries, Ma Kuan was hiding from the Secret Guardians Hall, and the commanders were paying attention to the Ji Public House's case. Chapter 732. Fu Mengshan and Su Huanda were sitting in the main hall. "Commander!" Chu Li greeted with a fist salute after entering the hall. "Commander Su." Fu Mengshan waved and shook his head. "You," Su Huanda sighed too. "I'm sorry to have given you an identity." "What about you, Sai?" Chu Li smiled apologetically. "I've let you down, commanders, but there's no other way. If I force myself to use that identity, it'll be useless." "That's true." Fu Mengshan chuckled. "You can only use your identity for this. It's shocking." After receiving the information, they looked at each other. Chu Li managed to gather so many grandmasters in one go. Moreover, he commanded them calmly and displayed outstanding commanding skills. He was indeed a talented commander. Su Huanda shook his head. "You've given the Holy Church of Light a surprise. Just wait for their revenge." Fu Mengshan said, "The Holy Church of Light will definitely retaliate this time. Young Chu, you must be prepared." Chu Li replied, "I can only cultivate in isolation. It won't be that easy." Su Huanda scoffed. "Do you think they can't do anything to you?" Fu Mengshan said, "They'll probably take revenge on Princess Xiao or the E Public House, or even the Ji Public House. They won't let you have a good time or the Holy Church of Light will lose face. You've caused too much trouble this time. Masters from so many sects have joined forces. Your ability to form alliances is unique." Su Huanda shook his head. "This will make the Holy Church of Light even more afraid of you. If it's like this now, what will happen in the future? It'll be a huge threat that must be eliminated. Unfortunately, our infiltration of the Holy Church of Light is not going well." Fu Mengshan sighed. "We can't find out what they're doing or else we'll be able to receive news in advance and be prepared. There's nothing we can do now." Su Huanda shook his head. "There's nothing we can do." Chu Li pondered. He initially planned to kill some Asuras and cultivate the nature restoration manifestation to a certain level. Then, he would break Shao Qi's inner state and win her heart so that they could be together for a long time. After winning Shao Qi's heart, he would then focus on breaking through to the enlightened mastery's boundary and obtain the Spirit Crane technique. With the Spirit Crane as a friend, cultivating the Spirit Crane technique would yield twice the result with half the effort. He would even have an advantage over the disciples of Green Deer Cliff. Unfortunately, he had painstakingly pursued it several times and even secretly followed Zhao Tianxing to watch him cultivate, but he did not manage to master the Spirit Crane technique. Zhao Tianxing had never cultivated the Spirit Crane incantation because it was too basic. Now that he was cultivating a more profound heart technique, he had stopped cultivating the Spirit Crane incantation and cast it aside. The Spirit Crane technique was the fundamental heart technique of Green Deer Cliff, and it could not be taught to outsiders. As a disciple of Green Deer Cliff, Xiao Yueling would never teach it to him. She even told him that it was useless for outsiders to learn the Spirit Crane technique. Without the inheritance of Green Deer Cliff, the Spirit Crane technique would be useless. His plan was to learn the spirit crane technique and then diligently cultivate the sun-cultivating white tiger portrait. If he wanted to learn the martial arts of the four major sects, or even the four major sects of the Great Li dynasty and master them to the peak, then he would have a chance to break through to the heavenly god realm. However, this great battle made him understand that things wouldn't go as he wished. Accidents were everywhere. It was impossible for him to kill the Asuras in peace, because the Holy Church of Light would not allow him to have peace. Su Huanda snorted. You've been in danger lately. Be careful of assassinations. Chu Li shook his head and sighed. I'm not afraid of assassination, but I'm afraid of them assassinating others. That's inevitable, Su Huanda said. The more you care about others, the more they'll assassinate you, so you have to pretend that you don't care. Chu Li frowned. If that doesn't work, let Chu Lingfeng enter the Great Li dynasty and investigate the Holy Church of Light. What nonsense! Su Huanda snorted. Fu Mengshan waved his hand. It's not that far yet. Young Chu, the Holy Church of Light can subdue you in the Great Ji dynasty, let alone the Great Li dynasty. Don't even think about it. Su Huanda said, don't think that you're invincible. You're still far from it. Chu Li nodded slowly. He agreed with this. He was still miles away from being invincible. Fu Mengshan said, the E-Public House isn't what it used to be. You don't have to worry too much. Yes, Chu Li said, but the Holy Church of Light still has to enter. They're after the High Duke's medallion. This time, it was High Duke Ji. I don't know which High Duke's public house it will be next. Their ambition is too shocking. If we don't plan now, there'll be endless trouble in the future. Then let's put some pawns in. Fu Mengshan said, it might work. Chu Li shook his head. It hasn't worked before, and it won't work in the future. I'll do it myself. This is too dangerous. Fu Mengshan frowned. Chu Li was the future successor. How could he take such a risk? Su Huanda scoffed. You have to know that it's the Great Li dynasty. Once you're discovered, you won't be able to escape. Moreover, the Holy Church of Light has many strange people. It's impossible to guard against them. Who knows which one of them will discover you? Fu Mengshan said, leave this to someone else. Chu Li said, I'm prepared to take things slow and steady. I'll start from the bottom one step at a time. I'll spend a few years to solidify my foundation. I won't rush for results. I'll eventually be able to come into contact with the higher-up. 10 years later, I might become an altar leader or even a priest. Hee. Fu Mengshan and Su Huanda laughed. Young Chu, you're really daring. Fu Mengshan laughed. Su Huanda shook his head and said, these four major sects all have secret skills that can test whether a person is loyal or not. Just like how none of the people they sent to the Tempest Temple were successful, and those they sent to the Holy Church of Light were all elites as well. None of them were spared. Su Huanda said, so, don't go to your death. Just cultivate your martial arts. It won't be too late to fight them when you're stronger. Chu Li said, can the Secret Guardians Hall provide me with a clean identity in the Li dynasty? Young Chu, you're not serious, are you? Fu Mengshan laughed. Chu Li nodded slowly. Yes, I want to try. Don't mess around. Su Huanda scoffed. Chu Li said, there's no harm in trying. If something goes wrong, I won't take the risk. It'll be too late by then. Once exposed, you'll definitely die. Su Huanda said. Fu Mengshan said, young Chu, this is the most dangerous path. Chu Li said in a low voice, Commander, someone has to try it. Otherwise, we'll never be able to do anything to the Holy Church of Light. Fu Mengshan turned to look at Su Huanda. Su Huanda shook his head. I don't agree. Chu Li said, Commander Su, don't worry. I won't go there immediately. After some time, after I'm done here, I'll go there and live for a while before entering the Holy Church of Light. Fu Mengshan pondered. He was now very confident in Chu Li. Chu Li could do things that others could not, but he could. Until now, there was no secret guardian who could enter the Holy Church of Light. Chuli could do what others could not. He might succeed, and that would be very important to the secret guardian's hall. Suddenly, hurried footsteps were heard from outside. Liang strode in with a bamboo tube. "Commander, it's urgent." Fu Mengshan quickly reached out to take it. After removing the wax seal, he took out the paper scroll and read it. He then frowned and passed it to Su Huanda. Su Huanda read it and passed it to Chuli. Chapter 733. P.S. Update complete. It should be Azura. Su Huanda scoffed. D****. Fu Mengshan asked, "Commander Su, do you have any ideas?" Su Huanda shook his head. "Who in the Secret Guardians Hall can handle Azura?" "I'll go," Chuli said. "I can avoid the Holy Church of Light's pursuit. They can't do anything in the military." He was excited whenever he heard about Azura. It was related to his nature restoration manifestation advancement. Moreover, capturing one more would be a great merit. Therefore, while others saw it as a dangerous path, he saw it as a bright path. "How dangerous is that?" Fu Mengshan frowned and said, "Young Chu, you should know that the scariest thing is not the Azuras, but the Grandmasters are very fragile in a military formation. They can easily lose their lives." Chuli said slowly, "I know. You still want to go?" Fu Mengshan scoffed. Chuli said, "If I don't go, who will? Qin Jin and the others? Or Centurion Chen and the others?" Fu Mengshan frowned and remained silent. Su Huanda said, "The Secret Guardians Hall will reject it and let the high official from the Imperial House go." Chuli shook his head. "Since the Shijiang military has sent someone to ask for help, how can the Secret Guardians Hall not send someone? Let me do it." Sigh. Fu Mengshan sighed. Su Huanda said, "Otherwise, let the other centurions discuss it and see who's willing to go." "All right." Fu Mengshan nodded. He was sure that the other centurions would avoid it. Only Chuli would not care about his own safety and volunteer. With such a subordinate, they had no worries as commanders, but they always felt that they were letting him down. Fu Mengshan's order? "Liang, let the other centurions come over." When Chen Donghai came in and saw Chuli, he was surprised. "Centurion Chu, is the Ji public house done?" Chuli nodded. Chen Donghai asked curiously, "Is there a problem?" Chuli shook his head. "There's no big problem." "That's good." Chen Donghai sighed. "If there's a problem with the High Duke's public house, I don't know what to do." Chuli smiled and nodded. Cough. Fu Mengshan coughed softly, glanced at the 12 centurions, and said in a deep voice, "I've just received a request for help from the Shijiang army. More than a dozen monsters have suddenly appeared in the Li dynasty's army, and the military formation is ineffective against them. They're killing people like slaughtering chickens, and they've already wiped out a 100-man squad of the Shijiang army." Chuli sat there silently. He knew what they were thinking. These fellows come and go like ghosts. They suddenly appear and launch sneak attacks. After killing someone, they float away. The military's tracking masters can't find them, so they asked the Secret Guardians Hall for help and asked us to send our tracking masters over. "The Ning brothers," someone said without hesitation. Su Huanda snorted. "Every courtyard has tracking experts, yet you're only sending the Ning brothers?" "Commander Su, if the Shijiang army can't do anything, then it's pointless for us to go." That's right. Maybe they're just trying their best and don't have much hope. Just send 2 tracking experts." They knew very well how powerful the Shijiang army was. The martial arts masters in the army far surpassed the Secret Guardians Hall. If they could not do anything to this group of monsters, then the Secret Guardians Hall would not be able to. "These 10 or so monsters are Azuras, right?" someone said. Su Huanda scoffed. "At least you understand. If I'm not mistaken, they should be Azuras." All the centurions fell silent. They kept quiet out of fear. The hall was so quiet that even a pin drop could be heard. They all knew how terrifying Asuras were. They had extremely strong bodies and were almost indestructible. Their killing techniques were almost instinctive. They were extremely terrifying existences. Su Huanda said, "Why? None of them want to go?" "Commander Su, these fellows are really… Do you want us to tell the Shijiang army that the secret Guardians Hall doesn't have any tracking masters? Why don't we just let the Ning brothers go?" Chen Donghai said, "The Ning brothers' light body technique is also very powerful. If they really find Asuras, they can escape." "Commander Su, there will be Shijiang army martial arts masters to protect us, right?" Su Huanda said, "Of course. I'm just afraid that they might not be able to protect us." A centurion sighed. Su Huanda said coldly, "All right then, you guys go about your business. I'll go find someone." "Commander Su, this is too dangerous." Everyone was a little embarrassed. Fu Mengshan waved his hand and said, "All right, I've seen through you guys. You snatch credit when it comes to it and run when it comes to danger. You're irresponsible." The centurions pretended not to hear him. This was a matter of their own strength and the life and death of their subordinate. How could they be heroes? When they left, there were only 3 people left in the hall. Sigh. Fu Mengshan shook his head and said, "Looks like you'll have to go, young Chu." Su Huanda said, "Call the Ning brothers." Chu Li shook his head. "I can do it myself." "Are you sure you can do it yourself?" Su Huanda frowned. Chu Li smiled and said, "I've dealt with King Ping before, so I'm not a stranger this time. King Ping also owes us a favor." Fu Mengshan smiled and said, "Young Chu, you can use this favor when you go this time." Chu Li nodded. "All right, I'll leave it to you." Fu Mengshan sighed. "The secret Guardians Hall is becoming more and more useless. We need to teach these fellows a lesson. It's not that we don't have talents, it's that we're all stingy and irresponsible." Su Huanda shook his head and said, "Other than the Ning brothers, Elder Gu and Elder Pu are rare tracking experts." Chu Li smiled. "They're doing this for the lives of their subordinates, just like how I don't want the Ning brothers to go." "That's true," Fu Mengshan said. "If it weren't for you, young Chu, I'd have to force them to go." Chu Li nodded. "Since there's an urgent need for reinforcements, I'll rush over immediately." "Be careful," Fu Mengshan said. "Your health is the most important. If you can't win, run." Chu Li nodded and fist saluted, then turned around and left the hall. King Ping's marshal's tent. King Ping was staring at the terrain. His face was gloomy and his brows were furrowed. A heavily armored soldier suddenly stepped in. "Your Royal Highness, there's a scribe from Your Royal Highness's residence outside. Scribe Lu is requesting an audience with his pass." "Scribe Lu?" King Ping raised his head and looked at him thoughtfully. "Let him in." "Yes." The heavily armored soldier responded and turned around to leave. After a while, Chu Li arrived at the military tent under the lead of the heavily armored soldier. He fist saluted. "Greetings, Your Royal Highness," King Ping said in a low voice. "It's really you." He waved his hand and the heavily armored soldier retreated. King Ping said, "You're the tracking expert sent by the secret Guardians Hall?" Chu Li smiled and nodded. "I've achieved some minor success in tracking. Your Royal Highness is looking for Asuras?" "That's right," King Ping said in a low voice. "Find them and kill them." Chu Li nodded. "Leave it to me, but I need enough masters." "No problem," King Ping scoffed. "How many masters do you want?" 15. Chu Li said, "Their cultivation level must be high enough. When do we act?" Chapter 734. King Ping ordered, "Someone gather 15 martial arts masters." "Yes," someone answered outside the tent. King Ping sized Chu Li up and said, "I heard you've cleaned up the Ministry of War?" Chu Li nodded. "The Ministry of War is still clean." There are no more traitors? People's hearts are unpredictable and can change at any time. Chu Li shook his head. They might be loyal to the Ji dynasty now, but they might be loyal to the Li dynasty the next. Therefore, traitors can never be completely eliminated. We can only try our best. You're very capable. King Ping nodded approvingly. So, have you ever thought of serving in the military? Chu Li shook his head and smiled. Once a secret guardian, always a secret guardian. It's okay. I can tolerate it if it's you. King Ping said, you can be a secret guardian in the military too. You can also pass the news to the secret guardians hall. Chu Li shook his head. I can't do such a thing. I'll have to disappoint your Royal Highness. What a pity. King Ping shook his head. You shouldn't use your abilities on the fairy's capital. You should use them on national affairs instead. It's a waste of resources. Your Royal Highness, you flatter me. Chu Li said, I know what I'm capable of. It'll be a great sin if I mess up military affairs. Anyway, you don't want to come. King Ping scoffed. You think it's dangerous in the military, right? Chu Li smiled and nodded. Yes. King Ping glanced at him and shook his head. You're a guy who's not afraid of death. I admire you more and more. If you can't stand firm in the fairy's capital in the future, come to me. I welcome you anytime. He waved his hand. Don't be in a hurry to refuse. No one knows what will happen to them in the next moment. Everyone's fate is in the hands of others. How can you decide for yourself? Yes, Chu Li said slowly. He frowned to himself. King Ping's words had a special meaning. It seemed like he really did not want to give up his military power. In that case, it would be a bloodbath. It was not appropriate for him to get involved in such matters for now. He was not qualified yet as his foundation was not stable. Commander-in-Chief. Someone shouted from outside. They're here. Come in. King Ping said. The thick curtains of the tent were lifted and 15 people walked in. Their expressions were calm and their gazes were like lightning. They cupped their fists and greeted in unison. Greetings, Marshal. Chu Li glanced at them. They were all grandmasters. How is it? King Ping looked at the 15 of them with satisfaction and smiled. Are you satisfied? Chu Li shook his head. No. King Ping turned to look at him. Chu Li shook his head. King Ping frowned and stared at him. Chu Li looked at him calmly and shook his head lightly. King Ping scoffed and waved his hand. You may leave. The 15 grandmasters gave a fist salute in response. They glanced at Chu Li and strode out of the tent. Why? King Ping asked. Chu Li shook his head. Their martial arts aren't strong enough. If they go, they'll just die. You've seen those guys? King Ping frowned. They're Azuras, right? Chu Li nodded. They're Azuras with profound cultivation levels. Even if these people were to slash at them with their treasured swords, those Azuras would stand still and not be able to do anything to them, so it won't work. Before he entered the camp, he had already tracked down that group of Azuras. With the help of the all-knowing scripture, they gathered together. The smell of blood was so strong that it was like a sun. He could see them even if he did not want to, so he sneaked over to take a look at them. He realized that their cultivation levels were similar to the ones that attacked the Ji public house. King Ping stared at him. You're not exaggerating on purpose, are you? Chu Li said, Your Royal Highness should know how strong they are. Think about it, can those 15 martial arts masters destroy a 100-man squad? They can't. King Ping shook his head. Chu Li smiled. You'll need to find a martial arts master who can destroy a 100-man squad with only 15 people, right? King Ping scoffed. Chu Li said, There are 10 Azuras. 10 of them can destroy a 100-man squad, 1 against 10. King Ping frowned and thought about it. The suppression of military formations is ineffective against them. Chu Li pondered. If there were 100 civilians, it wouldn't be difficult for one person to kill 100 of them, but there are 100 soldiers. King Ping nodded slowly. In this 100-man squad, there was 1 Grandmaster and 10 perfected innate masters. The rest of the soldiers were also innate masters and were proficient in the joint attack technique of military formations. The joint attack of 10 innate masters was equivalent to 1 Grandmaster. In this way, a 100-man squad was equivalent to 11 Grandmasters. However, this calculation was not correct because these 100 people were not isolated in a squad of 10 people. Teams of 10 people could also attack together, which was equivalent to 11 Grandmasters attacking together, which was extremely powerful. If the 15 Grandmasters who came in earlier could attack together, they could barely suppress a 100-man squad, but it would be impossible to destroy them cleanly. Chu said, "The Asura's killing technique is instinctive. With the same cultivation level, they are more terrifying, so we need 15 martial arts masters whose cultivation levels are far higher than theirs." "Alright again." King Ping scoffed and raised his voice. "Call the best 15 martial arts masters here." "Yes." Someone outside answered, and the sound of footsteps faded away. "Asuras can't be killed, they can only be crippled." King Ping frowned. "What are you going to do with them?" "Send them to Amethyst Mountain to be suppressed," Chu said. "Amethyst Mountain." King Ping nodded slowly. "Very good." Chu asked, "Your Royal Highness, do you have any concerns?" "As long as we can get rid of them, I don't care," King Ping said in a low voice. "Their existence has a huge impact on our morale." Chu nodded in understanding. Not being affected by military formations does affect morale. Military formations were the foundation of an army. Once they were in a military formation, the strength of a Grandmaster would be greatly reduced. However, ordinary soldiers in a military formation would have their strength greatly increased and their speed increased. With the strength of a martial arts master, an innate master could threaten a Grandmaster. Therefore, in a military formation, they were not afraid of a martial arts master. As long as they joined hands, a martial arts master would not be able to stop them. However, once the military formation lost its effectiveness, they would become lambs waiting to be slaughtered. They would be powerless in front of a martial arts master and would be at their mercy. "Commander-in-Chief." Footsteps were heard from outside. King Ping said, "Come in." The thick felt curtain was lifted again and 15 Grandmasters walked in. Chu glanced at them and shook his head. King Ping frowned and stared at him in dissatisfaction. He waved his hand. The 15 Grandmasters retreated. "These are the top martial arts masters in the camp." Chu shook his head and smiled. "They are not the top martial arts masters. The top martial arts masters are in the tent." King Ping burst out laughing. "You want my protectors?" Chu said, "Your Royal Highness's protectors and Deputy General Sun's protectors the last time we met are all rare martial arts masters." "You're quite brave," King Ping scoffed. Chapter 735. Chu asked, "Your Royal Highness, are you worried that they're trying to lure us away?" "It's not impossible," King Ping said. Chu nodded. "That depends on whether your Royal Highness dares to take this gamble. Although the masters who came in earlier are strong, they can't suppress the Asuras. The Asura's cultivation level is very high. The previous 2 batches of masters would be courting death if they went over. Is there no other way?" King Ping scoffed. Chu shook his head. "Either we wait for them to wreak havoc, or we take this gamble and try to eliminate them. They think that their whereabouts are so secretive that no one can find them." King Ping paced a few steps in the tent with his hands behind his back. He suddenly stopped and hit his palm with his fist. "Fine, I'll take this gamble." Chu smiled. "Thank you, Your Royal Highness." "Why are you thanking me?" "You're working for me." King Ping waved his hand. "Come out." 4 middle-aged men suddenly appeared in the tent. It was as if they had been standing there all along but were not discovered. Their auras were majestic, like 4 towering mountains in the tent, making it hard for people to breathe. Chuli smiled and nodded. Very well. He knew that although these 4 middle-aged men looked young, they were actually more than 100 years old. Their cultivation level was profound and they were rare masters. Each of these people's cultivation level was similar to the Asura's. With the advantage in numbers, they could suppress the Asura's. Coupled with his support, they could fight back. King Ping scoffed. Follow me. He turned and left the tent, followed by Chuli. King Ping walked past 4 more big tents, all of which belonged to the army's deputy generals. Sun Jianhe was nowhere to be seen. Chuli wondered how King Ping had dealt with him. When he returned to King Ping's tent again, he had gathered 16 masters. Are you satisfied this time? King Ping asked. Chuli smiled. I'm more confident now. Let's take action now. It's all up to you, King Ping said slowly. 10 middle-aged men were gathered around a bonfire in the forest. A few deer were being roasted on the fire, sizzling with oil. The oil dripped onto the bonfire, making a crisp crackling sound. The fire grew stronger, and the fragrance assailed the nostrils. They sat quietly with a long distance between them, surrounded by a subtle aura. The Asuras were filled with hostility towards one another. It was an instinctive hostility that could not be eliminated. It was very rare to see 2 Asuras together, let alone 10. At this moment, the 10 Asuras gathered together. Their hostility was surging, but they had been suppressed and maintained a balance. However, none of them could be bothered to speak. They only stared at the deer on the bonfire. Some were lost in thought, while others were cultivating. There's someone here. A low shout rang out. Chuli suddenly appeared behind them and shot a petrifying finger at one of them. The next moment, he appeared in front of the man, and the sword at his waist instantly slashed his ankle. With a muffled sound, the Asura's feet left his legs and he was unable to stand up. The crowd scoffed angrily and pounced on Chuli. With a twist of his body, Chuli broke free from their encirclement. As his sword flashed past, clanging sounds could be heard as it pierced through the throats of several Asuras in an instant. It was as if he had struck a rock. At their peak, they were invulnerable. Ordinary people would feel despair when they saw these monsters. They were invulnerable, treasured swords could not cut them, and palm and fist energy could hardly hurt them. Fighting an Asura was like fighting an Iron Man, which made people feel despair. However, Chuli knew that they were not that scary. As long as he caught the moment when their vitality was weak, he could stab them. Others could not see clearly, so he could only force his way through. He had the omniscient mirror, so he could see clearly. The Asuras were extremely fast. Even if he saw them, it would be difficult to take advantage of their weakness. However, it was different with the help of others. He needed the help of masters like Fa Yuan and Lu Yurong. Although the 16 masters he brought with him were not as good as Fa Yuan and Lu Yurong, they were not too far off and could fight. When the 16 masters saw Chuli disappear, they desperately chased after him. Finally, they saw Chuli fighting 9 Asuras, so they rushed forward. With their help, Chuli sighed in relief. Elder Luo, Elder Gu, come with me to deal with this, Chuli said. He had already injured the most powerful one. Now, he would find the second master and the other 2 elders to attack with him. Even if they were not convinced by Chuli, they followed the habits of soldiers and did not disobey. This Asura was thin and short, a head shorter than them. He looked easy to bully, but he was extremely fast. His body movement technique was like a ghost, and his Shura palm was unpredictable. If the 3 of them did not attack him together, they would not be able to stop him. Chu Li's omniscient mirror and manifestation of nature restoration were operating at high speed, including everyone in the field. Suddenly, he pointed backward. The petrifying finger hit an Asura's shoulder, and his body suddenly stopped. Chu Li followed up with a second finger and hit him again. He was about to move but stopped again. In just 2 moves, Chu Li had already appeared in front of him. With a flash of his sword, both of his legs were cut off, and he fell to the ground. Chu Li and Elder Luo and Elder Gu surrounded the thin Azura. When he broke away, the Azura had already turned the tables. Once Chu Li joined in, he was suppressed again and struggled. Chu Li's petrifying finger did not seem to require inner energy as he kept pointing. He used the petrifying finger with his right hand to attack the Azura, and used the petrifying finger with his left hand to sneak an attack. Whichever master was at a disadvantage, he would immediately point his finger at them to relieve the pressure. Bang! With a muffled sound, the Azura that was surrounded by Chu Li suddenly turned into a skeleton. His eyes glowed red as he glanced at them coldly and mercilessly. His body movement technique suddenly sped up, and he became even more unpredictable like a ghost. Chu Li scoffed. "Let's go." The 16 Grandmasters immediately took off. They were extremely fast and did not hesitate at all. Chu Li was the last one to run. He suddenly pointed backward and hit a middle-aged Azura with a petrifying finger. With a flash, he appeared in front of him and hit him with another petrifying finger before the other Azuras could reach him. Then, with a flash of his sword, the Azura's legs were separated from his body, and he fell to the ground. The Azura's tolerance for pain was beyond imagination. The pain of their legs being cut off did not make them scream, and they only grunted before they fell silent. When Chu Li suddenly disappeared, the other 7 Azuras stopped. They stared at the direction where Chu Li had disappeared with gloomy expressions, and then turned to look at each other. Chu Li and the others ran for more than 10 miles before they stopped. The moonlight was like water. Although they were not young, they still looked excited. "Centurion Chu, that was fun." A middle-aged, round-faced elder laughed. "This sneak attack was really fun." Chu Li smiled. "Seniors, I'm very grateful that you listened to me. Once they use their secret skill, there's no need for us to fight them head-on. We've killed 3 of them in this sneak attack, so there are still 7 left. Next time, they'll definitely use their secret skill, so we have to retreat immediately. Centurion Chu, don't worry, we'll listen to you." The others gave him a fist salute. At first, they doubted his ability, but when they saw that he was able to track down the Azuras, they were convinced that he was indeed capable. This time, they were even more impressed that he was able to cripple 3 Azuras in one go while the others were unharmed. Chu Li said, "Once they use their secret skill, we'll retreat. Once they stop using their secret skill, we'll charge forward. Let's see how many times they can struggle." An Azura that used their secret skill was extremely terrifying. Even if they used their secret skill, it would be a Pyrrhic victory, which was not what Chu Li wanted. The Azura's secret skill could not be used more than twice a day. This was what Fa Yuan had told him before they parted after the Ji High Duke's battle. It was the latest secret that the Tempest Temple had researched. Chapter 736. The 7 Azuras tossed the remaining 3 aside and allowed them to recover on their own. In a few days their legs would grow back. This was the wonder of the body of Azura, a wonder that was coveted by everyone in the martial arts world and even the 4 major sects. As soon as they sat down, Chu Li appeared again and shot several petrifying fingers at one of them. Before that person could perform his secret skill, Chu Li struck him with another petrifying finger and chopped off both of his legs. Every time he used the petrifying finger to break the body of Azura, Chu Li would be amazed by the martial arts of the Tempest Temple. Such a powerful body of Azura was restrained by the petrifying finger. Bam bam bam! The 6 Azuras performed their secret skill again. No matter how hostile and indifferent they were to their companions, they were enraged by Chu Li. Their killing intent surged and they were determined to kill him. Before the 16 Grandmasters could rush out, they heard Chu Li shout, "Retreat!" They turned and ran. Chu Li ran in the opposite direction and lured the 6 Azuras to follow him. After running for a mile, Chu Li suddenly disappeared. The 6 Azuras were furious and wanted to scream at the sky. They had a sense of smell that far surpassed that of humans, so it was easy for them to find someone. Unfortunately, they could not track Chu Li's scent at all. After a while, they could only withdraw their secret skill and return to their original spot. However, they did not expect that the 16 Grandmasters were already waiting there. They were already angry that they could not catch up to Chu Li. When they saw the 16 Grandmasters, they rushed over without hesitation. The 16 Grandmasters were almost 3 against 1, but they managed to stop them. Bam bam bam! With a series of muffled sounds, they performed their secret skill again. Retreat! Chu Li's voice rang out. The 16 Grandmasters turned around and ran away. Chu Li suddenly appeared and shot out 3 petrifying fingers from each of his hands toward the 6 Azuras to stop them from chasing after him. They turned and chased after him without hesitation. Chu Li ran for another 2 miles and disappeared again. The 6 Azuras were provoked by Chu Li's killing intent, but they were not stupid. They immediately realized Chu Li's intention and turned to leave. They would kill Chu Li tomorrow, so it was better to leave today. However, Chu Li suddenly appeared and attacked one of the Azuras with 2-finger forces. The Azura was tall and strong. He dodged the first finger, but he couldn't dodge the second. The second finger seemed to have been calculated and was waiting for him to collide with it. He tried his best to avoid the second finger, but the third finger was already upon him. Unable to avoid it, he could only strike out with his palm. His body suddenly froze. At this moment, his companions sensed that something was wrong and rushed towards him. Chu Li appeared at the same time that his body froze. The Modesty sword drew a sword ray that swept past his ankles. Both of his feet silently left his legs. The Azuras were hostile toward each other, so they kept a safe distance from each other to prevent themselves from fighting. Chu Li made use of the distance between them. They rushed over, their eyes shining with a cold light, but most of them couldn't use their secret technique. The heavenly demonic orb fell into Chu Li's precordium, and his entire body was filled with boundless energy. Chu Li rushed toward the 5 men and forcefully took on their Shura palms, using a suicidal method. From time to time, he would suffer a Shura palm, but he didn't seem to care. He simply brandished the Modesty sword while using the petrifying finger or the spear finger strike. The second stage of the spear finger strike was silent, like a gentle breeze that was impossible to guard against. However, the Azuras had amazing battle instincts, and the second stage of the spear finger strike could not hit them. Centurion Chu. 16 Grandmasters arrived. When they saw that Chu Li was being attacked by the 5 Azuras, they immediately rushed over. Chu Li was instantly relieved of the pressure. The rest was much simpler. He used the omniscient mirror and the manifestation of nature restoration to wander among the crowd. At critical moments, his attack was usually effective. 2 hours later, all 5 Azuras had fallen. Chu Li let out a long sigh of relief. His entire body felt exhausted. It was not his physical strength that had been exhausted, but his mental strength. They brought 10 Azuras back to the main camp. King Ping held a banquet in his tent and invited Chu Li to drink alone. King Ping's tent was extremely luxurious. The delicacies on the table were the best Chu Li had ever seen. Chu Li had seen countless delicacies in the High Duke's public house, the imperial residence, and even other places, but he had never seen these delicacies on the table. They looked, smelled so good that he drooled. After a small jar of wine was sealed with clay, it was almost tasteless. When it was poured into a jasper cup, it was like oil, giving off a heavy feeling. In one gulp, the wine was fragrant, and his organs were steeped in the aroma. It was as if his brain was filled with the mellow aroma. It was truly a supreme enjoyment. Good wine, Chu Li praised. Come, I'll give you a toast. You've helped me get rid of my mortal enemy. King Ping raised his jasper cup and praised, Sun Janhe from last time, and the Azuras this time, well done. Chu Li smiled and toasted with him. Your Royal Highness, you're flattering me. Putting down the jasper cup, King Ping sighed. I know you're worried about the fight for the throne, so you don't dare to come and help me. Chu Li was silent. This topic was not suitable for discussion. King Ping said, I know that everyone thinks highly of sixth younger brother. They think that he's the legitimate heir and should be the emperor. Chu Li held the jasper cup and played with it as if it was a rare treasure that he could not get enough of. He did not listen to King Ping anymore. King Ping continued, But I know that once sixth younger brother ascends the throne, my life will be in danger. Chu Li continued to play with the jasper cup. King Ping chuckled. If it were me, I wouldn't feel at ease leaving a brother who has been in charge of the military for so many years alive. Chu Li was still playing with the jasper cup. King Ping said, Chu Li, you also think that I can't compete with sixth younger brother, right? Chu Li sighed and put down the jasper cup. Your Royal Highness, I know that you only want to be a general and not the emperor. Your Royal Highness, you're not suited to be the emperor either. King Ping squinted his eyes and smiled. What do you mean? Chu Li pointed inside the tent and shook his head. If your Royal Highness is aiming for the throne, wouldn't this be giving others a handle on you? The imperial house wouldn't be so luxurious, yet your Royal Highness dares to do this? King Ping snorted and said nothing. Chu Li said, Your Royal Highness, you don't want to be the emperor, and you can't be the emperor either. If you don't want King Jing to be the emperor, then it's easy. Just support someone else. King Ping said coldly, King An? Chu Li shook his head. King An isn't cut out to be the emperor. Although he's working hard, he's getting further and further away. Then who has hope? Don't tell me you're going to say King Cheng? King An has an imperial crown prince. Chu Li smiled. King Ping was surprised. Chu Li could not help but laugh. It seems that your Royal Highness is not well informed about the fairies' capital. You don't even know that King An has an imperial crown prince? King Ping said thoughtfully, Don't tell me that I'm going to support a child to be the emperor. Chu Li said, Your Royal Highness, you can think about it. Since King Ping did not know Su An's identity, he did not want to say more. As for what would happen in the future, no one could say for sure. He had planted a seed first. Whether it could sprout in the future depended on the situation. Chapter 737. He had never thought about this. From his point of view, there were only two possible successors to the throne. It was either King Jing or him. The others were delusional. It was impossible for King An to be the successor. In terms of morals and martial arts, he did not have an advantage in either. Chu Li's words had opened a door for him. Although it was somewhat absurd, there were many absurd things in the world. Experts could often turn the impossible into the possible. If King An's son succeeded the throne would be unstable and someone would be needed to protect it. If he did not want King Jing, King Cheng, and the other imperial uncles to kick him out of power, he would have to become the key to stabilizing the sea. This thought only flashed across his mind for a moment before disappearing. The current situation was the most favorable for King Jing. Letting King An's son inherit the throne was out of reach. Your Royal Highness, have you ever wondered why these 10 Azuras were mobilized? Chu Li asked. Could it be a sign that the Li dynasty is about to invade the south? Yes, it's very possible. King Ping nodded. Chu Li nodded. They'll first dampen the morale of the army. Then, they'll be able to save a lot of energy when they send their troops over. As far as I know, the military strength of the Li dynasty is constantly increasing. It's really not a good thing for the Ji dynasty. I'm just waiting for them to come. King Ping scoffed. Chu Li said, Your Royal Highness, you must be careful of assassinations by martial arts masters. The Holy Church of Light is becoming more and more rampant. Since they dared to attack the High Duke's public house, they are capable of anything. He understood King Ping's desire for battle. King Ping's value as a marshal could only be demonstrated when a great battle was imminent. Only then would his position be more stable. If the Great Li dynasty was weak, his position as the commander-in-chief would no longer exist. He would have been summoned back to Luoyang long ago, stripped of his military power, and retired in peace. King Ping nodded. "I'll be careful and keep my guard up against them." Chu Li said no more. It was enough for him to give King Ping a reminder. If he said more, King Ping would be disgusted. Chu Li was driving a horse carriage, walking slowly on the main road. The carriage was extremely old, and had been exposed to the elements for a long time. It looked like it was about to fall apart. It had been 2 days since he left the West Borderline military camp. This horse carriage was a gift from the West Borderline military camp. It carried 10 Azuras. According to King Ping, they did not deserve to sit in a good horse carriage. He planned to send these 10 Azuras to the Amethyst Mountain. The Amethyst Mountain had already received the news and sent their disciples over. He suddenly stopped the carriage and smiled. Sure enough, the Holy Church of Light had not given up on this group of Azuras and had sent people over to rescue them. There was still a traitor in the Shijiang military who knew his route. There was no way to avoid traitors unless he could walk through every corner of the Shijiang military camp and look into the minds of every soldier. But if he wanted to look through the minds of 100,000 soldiers, he would definitely be exhausted to death. He definitely wouldn't put in so much effort. He drove the carriage to the side of the road, tied the reins, and suddenly disappeared. He appeared in front of the 4 middle-aged men. Without saying a word, he waved his sword and stabbed. The 7 forms of godly sword had been combined with the cloud slashing sword technique. Its power was overbearing. As the heavenly demonic orb landed on Chu Li's precordium, he felt a sudden surge of power, causing the speed of his sword to increase by several notches. In an instant, the orb had reached the throat of a middle-aged man. The middle-aged man suddenly retreated, but he was not faster than Chu Li's sword. Chi! The sword pierced his throat. Old Pang! Junior Brother Pang! Brother Pang! The other 3 middle-aged men roared and rushed towards Chu Li. Chu Li disappeared in a flash and reappeared behind another tall middle-aged man, thrusting his sword again. Ding! A saber blocked in front of the sword. The middle-aged man held the saber horizontally in front of his throat and staggered a step back. The other 2 men attacked Chu Li at the same time, one with a fist and the other with a sword. These 4 men's cultivation levels were extremely high. They were here to deal with Chu Li, so they naturally had a chance of winning. They did not expect Chu Li's martial arts to be so strange. He used a secret skill to suddenly appear and ambush one of them, turning the 4 of them into 3. Chu Li suddenly disappeared. The heavenly demonic orb condensed in his precordium again. He sat cross-legged on a tree and used the nature restoration manifestation and the omniscient mirror at the same time to observe the 3 men 5 miles away. When they saw Chu Li disappear, they quickly turned around and gathered together to save the middle-aged man. After consuming the spirit medicine, the middle-aged man's breathing stabilized. His face was pale and gloomy. He was injured in one move and almost died. He could not resist the sword at all. This made him feel a little disappointed, but he also felt humiliated and angry. Brother Pang, this guy lives up to his name. He's very difficult. Let's call a few more people over. A thin middle-aged man said. We said we're going to kill him, but in the end, he's going to kill us. That's right. The round-faced man beside him nodded. The middle-aged man's throat was stabbed, and the sword force was still lingering around the wound. He could not suppress it. He faintly felt that he was in danger. If this went on, he would not be able to withstand the sword force. He waved his hand and made a hand gesture. You want us to channel our energy to help you heal? The round-faced man asked. The middle-aged man nodded. Junior Brother Pang, let me help you. The short and fat middle-aged man who had been quiet all this while said. He sat behind him and placed his palms on his back. The other two middle-aged men stood on either side of him and looked around. Their bodies were tense as they guarded against Chu Li's reappearance. Chu Li's nature restoration manifestation was analyzing their thoughts and looking for an opening to kill them in one hit. After a while, white steam rose from the top of the short and fat middle-aged man's head. The other two middle-aged men became even more tense and vigilant, afraid that Chu Li would appear. Chu Li suddenly appeared and pierced the short and fat middle-aged man's back with his sword. The tip of the sword appeared in front of his heart and then disappeared. Pft! The short and fat middle-aged man spat out a mist of blood, drenching the back of the middle-aged man. Pft! The middle-aged man spat out a mouthful of blood into the sky and fell limply. Chu Li's sword was steady and accurate. The short and fat middle-aged man was fully focused on helping his companion channel his energy to heal. When he was stabbed in the chest, his breathing became chaotic. The middle-aged man was at the most critical moment. His breathing was disrupted and he failed at the last moment. Under the violent backlash, the sword force instantly pierced through his brain and he instantly fainted. Brother Peng, Brother Xie. The two men were shocked. They quickly stood back to back and stared at their surroundings. Let's each carry one person. Let's go, the thin middle-aged man said. The two men each carried one person on their back and shot out like a wisp of smoke. Chu Li appeared out of thin air and silently pointed two of his fingers forward. The two spear finger strikes drifted over like a breeze. The next moment, Chu Li appeared 100 meters away from them. He stood with his sword and stared at them coldly. The two men were instantly on guard. The warning signs kept ringing in their hearts. They suddenly froze. The two spear finger strikes hit them. Under Chu Li's intentional misdirection, they mistook the warning signs of the spear finger strikes for Chu Li. As a result, they could not dodge in time. Chu Li took a step forward and appeared in front of them. His sword flashed and the two men fell to the ground with their hands on their abdomens. He looked down at the four men and said, "All of you have life-saving spirit medicine. Eat it and I'll spare your lives today." As soon as he finished speaking, his sword flashed twice. The other two men were stabbed in their abdomens and their martial arts were crippled. Under the resentful gazes of the three men, Chu Li floated away. He was delighted. The manifestation of nature restoration had improved and he had a better grasp of the situation. He could fight with more ease. He did not increase his cultivation level but his strength. After walking 300 meters, he turned around and said, "Come out." Three young men walked out of the forest and fist saluted. "Junior brother Chu." Chu Li glanced at them and smiled. "Greetings, senior brothers. Please follow me." Chapter 738. Gung Huarong was ugly but very talkative. He smiled. "Junior brother Chu, we didn't get to know each other after a fight. I didn't think we'd really become a family." Chu Li nodded. "Life is unpredictable. I've offended you all." Gung Huarong waved his hand. "We were still enemies back then. Of course we had to be ruthless." Chu Li smiled. "Same to you." He went to the carriage and opened it, revealing 10 Azuras inside. Their injuries were mostly healed. Chu Li said, "Their acupuncture points are sealed every 2 hours." "Understood." Gung Huarong smiled. "We've been warned so many times. We'll definitely send them back to the mountain. Sigh, they're even more precious than us." Chu Li smiled. "If the sect wants to improve, they're a key. It's up to us if we can grasp the opportunity." Sigh. Gung Huarong shook his head. "In my opinion, who cares about the Azuras? We should focus on our own martial arts. We haven't even mastered our martial arts yet. Why bother with these crooked ways?" Chu Li smiled. "The sect has no choice but to do so. Oh right, I have a letter here. Please help me pass it to Master, Senior Brother Gung." No problem, I'll deliver it. Gung Huarong smiled, but we didn't expect you to join the Nature Manifestation Peak. We thought it was the Phantom Een Peak. Chu Li could see through the Phantom Een skill, so he was the best cultivator for it. Yet, he chose to cultivate the Nature Restoration Manifestation instead of the Phantom Een skill. What a waste. Chu Li said, the Nature Restoration Manifestation is more magical. The power of the Phantom Een skill is limited. Gung Huarong looked at the other three and shook his head helplessly. Brothers, hurry up. Be careful of the Holy Church of Light. Chu Li said. Of course, of course. Gung Huarong nodded. They had just witnessed the battle between Chu Li and the 4 Grandmasters. The 4 Masters seemed powerless in front of Chu Li. In fact, their cultivation level was not much weaker than Chu Li. It was just that Chu Li's body movement technique was strange, and he was good at scheming, so he had the upper hand. If it was them, they could only run for their lives if they met the 4 Masters. Qing Yun Town. A bright moon hung in the sky, its moonlight sprinkled over the courtyard like water. Chu Li and Xiao Shi sat at the stone table, playing chess. Yang Su and Menglon were at the other side of the courtyard, helping Chu Li clean up his house. What's up with you today? Xiao Shi put down a black chess piece and said lazily, You actually have the mood to play chess with me. Chu Li smiled and said, Tension and relaxation is the way of the martial arts. I've been too busy recently and I'm feeling impatient. It's time for me to calm down. The Azuras were mostly killed. His manifestation of nature restoration had improved significantly, and his all-knowing sutra had also become strong enough. There was no need for him to be in a hurry to cultivate and kill. Xiao Shi glanced at him and shook her head. Are you nervous? Chu Li's heart skipped a beat. He did not expect Xiao Shi to know him so well that she could tell. Xiao Shi tilted her head and looked at him. Her eyes were as deep as the abyss as she sized him up. There aren't many things in this world that can make you nervous. It's about my younger sister, right? Chu Li smiled bitterly. Xiao Shi asked, Have you mastered the manifestation of nature restoration? I want to try, Chu Li said. Xiao Shi pursed her lips and smiled. Then try. What's there to be nervous about? Chu Li sighed and shook his head. Xiao Shi said, If it doesn't work, then continue cultivating. With your aptitude, there's no martial arts that you can't cultivate. Chu Li sighed. I'm just afraid that my manifestation of nature restoration won't be able to match up to Lady Xiao Shi's. That's a problem. Xiao Shi pondered and nodded. Why don't we think of a way to divert attention and stop her from cultivating? That's not a bad idea. Chu Li smiled. Xiao Shi pondered for a while and nodded. How about this? You don't have to do it. I'll do it. I'll write a letter to my younger sister and ask her to come over and be my protector. Just say that the Holy Church of Light is going wild and might assassinate me. Let her protect me for a while. Good idea, Chu Li exclaimed. Xiao Shi said, Once she comes to the imperial residence, I'll pester her and stop her from cultivating. Thank you, Lady Xiao Shi. Chu Li closed fist saluted and smiled. Xiao Shi glanced at him and scoffed, You're usually so majestic and arrogant. Why are you an idiot when it comes to my younger sister? What's there to be nervous about? She's just a normal woman. Chu Li laughed and nodded. You're right, lady. I can't stand it. Xiao Shi rolled her eyes at him and said, I'm worried for you. If it were me, I wouldn't have let her cultivate the regal sword scripture. This wouldn't have happened. Chu Li said, I can't just care about myself and ignore the lady's feelings. You care about her too much. Xiao Shi said snappily. You care about her all the time and what happens in the end. Chu Li nodded and smiled. Lady is right. It's your turn now. If you show me even 1% of what you're capable of, my younger sister would have broken through her inner state. Xiao Shi scoffed and put down another black chess piece. Chu Li smiled but did not say anything. Seo sure thought that he was a yes man in front of the third lady, but she was wrong. He was just as strong in front of the third lady. It was just that he was not domineering enough when it came to her cultivating the regal sword scripture. This was also because of his memories from his past life. His attitude towards women was different from the men in this world. He was more equal and respectful. I'm starting to feel like eating the spirit fruits from the spirit crane's peak. Seo sure sighed. I haven't been there for a long time. Chuli laughed. It's only been a few days. He had been busy with the war at the G public house and chasing after Azura. He did not have the time to bring Seo sure to the spirit crane's peak. Not long enough? Seo sure asked. Chuli said, I'll go get a few fruits. Let's go tomorrow. It's dangerous at night. Forget it then. We'll talk about it tomorrow, Seo sure said. Chuli disappeared in a flash. A moment later, he was holding a few tender yellow fruits the size of an apple. Seo sure rolled her eyes at him and took one. Chuli said, I'll be going to the Li dynasty soon. Seo sure put the fruit in her mouth down and frowned. What are you going to do now? Find out about the Holy Church of Light. Do you want to die? We'll start from the outer layer. Take it step by step and see which layer we can reach. So you're going to be a traitor? Yes. Chuli nodded. You're a centurion, a rank 1 scribe and a head chief. Why are you going to the Li dynasty to be a traitor? Seo sure said impatiently, Are you out of your mind? Chuli sighed. It's not just for the G dynasty, it's for others, but also for myself. Seo sure said, You're annoyed that they keep on assassinating you? Chuli nodded. If we don't get rid of their thoughts, they'll never stop and you won't be able to live. I'm used to it. Seo sure scoffed. Assassinations are quite interesting. Chuli laughed. Seo sure said, How do you want to get rid of their thoughts? Find their weakness. Chuli said. Seo sure was surprised. You want to destroy the Holy Church of Light? Chuli said, I have to try. How dare you? Seo sure scoffed. But I like it. Let's do it. Chuli was surprised. He did not expect her to say that. Seo sure said, The Holy Church of Light isn't that easy to destroy. Otherwise, it would have been destroyed many times. It's as old as the Tempest Temple. Who knows how many martial arts masters there are in the church? Chuli nodded slowly. Seo sure said, I can't help you with martial arts. I can only help you with ideas. All right, I'll have to trouble you when the time comes. What about Kingen? Seo sure asked. You're not going to kill him? It's not time yet. Chuli shook his head. I really hope he'll die from internal demons. Seo sure scoffed. Chapter 739. P.S. Update complete. Morning. The chirping of birds was crisp and clear. The air at Spirit Crane's Peak was exceptionally fresh. Taking a breath was as if it could penetrate one's heart and drive away all the impurities in one's organs. Seo sure sat under a tree and breathed in the fresh air of Spirit Crane's Peak. She felt lighter and more comfortable, as if she was a bird that was about to fly away. She glanced at Chuli, who was fighting with the 2 spirit cranes, and continued to breathe. The sky was blue and the clouds were white. The sky here was exceptionally blue, as if it had been washed by water. The clouds were thick and dense, like real cotton floating in the air, not moving for a long time. Chuli played with the 2 spirit cranes for a while. He took out a scroll and opened it. It was a drawing of a ferocious tiger. The 2 spirit cranes scanned it with their bright black eyes and immediately retreated, letting out a clear cry. Chuli saw the real spirit tiger in their minds. At the peak of a towering mountain, a huge spirit tiger was standing on a boulder at the top of the mountain and howled at the sky. The howl was so real. The 2 cranes were flying in the sky. When they heard the howl, their blood boiled and all the energy in their body disappeared. They fell down. If it wasn't for their parents who saw the situation and quickly caught them and flew away, they would have been swallowed by the spirit tiger. The majestic appearance of the spirit tiger was still etched in their minds. Just thinking about it made them shiver, and they did not dare to go near it. They also warned Chu Li not to go near it or else he would be eaten. They were very smart and realized that Chu Li could understand their howls. Chu Li pondered and smiled as he kept the scroll. He sat cross-legged on a boulder and visualized the white tiger in his mind. The white tiger in his mind was different from before. He replaced the spirit tiger in the minds of the two cranes with the original white tiger. The sun-cultivating white tiger portrait's aura became stronger. 2 hours later, he slowly stopped. The sun-cultivating white tiger portrait advanced a level and his body became stronger. However, it was a pity that it was extremely difficult for him to improve further. After all, he had not experienced the spirit tiger for himself. Furthermore, there might be some problems with his cultivation technique as well. He had almost reached the peak, and he needed a better cultivation technique before he could continue tempering his body. If he could personally stay by the spirit tiger's side and observe their postures and experience their essence, just like how he was by the spirit crane's side now, he should be able to cultivate the sun-cultivating white tiger portrait to perfection. Then, he could cultivate the spirit crane technique to perfection. He might even have a chance to become an enlightened master. Now that he thought about it, the heavenly god did not seem to be far away from him. It was a pity that there was no way to learn the spirit crane technique, and the sun-cultivating white tiger portrait did not allow him to observe the spirit tiger up close. It was not what he wanted. If he could ride on the crane and look at the spirit tiger from afar, he would be able to experience its dominance for himself. Unfortunately, the spirit crane was even more arrogant than humans and would not allow anyone to ride on it. The night was like water, and a bright moon hung in the sky. The imperial residence of King An fell into a deep slumber. The two men in black fluttered over without a sound. They did not alert the protectors of the imperial residence of King An and landed as light as a feather in the Tianshu courtyard. "Who's there?" A loud shout suddenly rang out, startling the entire imperial residence of King An. The two men in black calmly glanced at the four protectors who floated down. Zhu Tianhua's burly figure was especially eye-catching. He glared at them and said coldly, "What business do you have here in the middle of the night?" The two men were dressed in black but did not wear masks. One was a handsome young man, the other was a cold middle-aged man. "Let Chu Li come out to die." One of the handsome young men said lightly, "We are here to take his life, we will not kill the innocent. However, if he doesn't come out, that may not be the case. We can only kill you to force him to show himself. The head chief is not in the residence." Zhu Tianhua scoffed. "You two have come at a bad time." "Not here." The handsome young man turned to look at the middle-aged man. "Senior Pu, it seems like we can only start a massacre." "Who are you?" Zhu Tianhua asked. "High official of the Holy Church of Light. As for our names, you don't need to know." The handsome young man shook his head and smiled. "I have long heard of Chu Li's name. I wanted to spend some effort to kill him, but he is not here." "Young son, don't follow them? Gather? Benevolent guillotine. Forcing worry? Feed? Yes." Young son said respectfully, "Let me handle this kind of small matter. How about Senior Pu hold the line for me?" "Yes," Senior Pu said. Young son took a step forward and stood in front of Zhu Tianhua. He lightly pressed his palm down. Zhu Tianhua was alert enough to not take it head-on. He took a step back and avoided the palm. Bang! A dull sound was heard. The palm energy left a clear palm print on the wall behind Zhu Tianhua. Zhu Tianhua looked at the neat palm print that was branded on the wall. He wondered if he could do it. The palm energy was still condensed from such a distance. He was still lacking. His cultivation level was not as high as this guy's. Such a big guy, but he is not stupid. The handsome young man laughed. Again. He waved his sleeve and pressed his left palm forward. Zhu Tianhua was alarmed. He quickly retreated and avoided the sleeve. Chi! A clear whistle was heard. The wind from the sleeve swept past him and landed on the wall behind him. It left a deep mark as if it was slashed by a knife. His sleeve was a sneak attack. Zhu Tianhua cursed in his mind. He said coldly, "Despicable! You are indeed smart." The handsome young man shook his head and laughed. "But no matter how smart you are, it is useless if you are not skilled in martial arts. Let's not be courteous with him. Since he wants to kill us, let's attack him together," Lu Xing said in a low voice. Xiang Feishu and Huiyuhao rushed towards the handsome young man with him. "Humph!" Senior Pu scoffed. He took a step forward and blocked their path. He threw a punch. Bang! Huiyuhao flew backwards and crashed heavily into the wall. Huiyuhao spat out a mouthful of blood. He slid down the wall and sat at the foot of the wall. "Old Hua, are you dead?" Lu Xing shouted. Huiyuhao said weakly, "I won't die. I don't have the energy to fight anymore." "Useless," Lu Xing scoffed. He and Xiang Feishu relied on their speed to fight with the middle-aged man named Pu. They could still hold on for a while. Zhu Tianhua was forced to retreat step by step. He was about to retreat into the shadows at the corner of the wall. The handsome young man was at ease. He was like a cat playing with a mouse. As he fought, he teased, "You grew so big for nothing. You are useless. Your cultivation level is too low. You don't have a good aptitude, right? When a person grows big, they are either stupid or stupid." Zhu Tianhua scoffed. "At least I'm better than a little shorty like you." The young man was handsome. He was just a little short. He only reached Zhu Tianhua's shoulder. The handsome young man's smile froze. Then, his face darkened. "All right. If I don't kill you today, I will change my surname to yours. I don't have a son like you." Zhu Tianhua pouted. The handsome young man said coldly, "You have a father like me. Big guy, how do you want to die?" "I want you to die." Zhu Tianhua scoffed. "You look all right. It's just that you are too talkative. You are like an old lady. Annoying. Which woman can stand it? You are looking for death." The handsome young man was furious. "Go and die." He waved both of his palms and attacked Zhu Tianhua at lightning speed. Zhu Tianhua suddenly rolled on the ground. He awkwardly avoided the two palms. Xiao Sun was furious. He turned around and wanted to chase after him. Suddenly, a palm appeared from the shadows at the corner of the wall. It was sudden and fast. Xiao Sun was gathering all his strength to chase after Zhu Tianhua. When he was alerted, the palm had already pressed against his back. Boom! The muffled sound of thunder could be heard. Xiao Sun's body suddenly froze. Boom! The second palm was aimed at the handsome young man's back. Chapter 740. Rumble. A muffled sound rang out in the distance like a muffled thunder. This palm was fast and ruthless, and its power was astonishing. Dong. It was as though a bronze bell had been struck. The middle-aged man's expression remained unchanged, and he merely took a step back. A middle-aged man appeared from the shadows. He looked like a simple farmer with a bitter face, as if his life was very difficult. There were too many worries and hardships that made him frown. Anyone who looked at him would feel worried for him. He was the disciple of the Amethyst Mountain, Zhao Jiang. Zhu Tianhua floated to Zhao Jiang's side and said, "Senior Zhao, be careful of that guy, he's very cunning." Zhao Jiang nodded. "Frivolous on the outside, cunning on the inside. I can see." Xiao Sun's handsome face turned serious as he scoffed. "You are a disciple of the Amethyst Mountain?" Zhao Jiang nodded. "Yes. The Amethyst Mountain is one of the 4 major sects, yet a disciple of yours is here as a protector of an imperial residence. Isn't this a disgrace to the Amethyst Mountain?" Xiao Sun smiled as he shook his head. "I really feel ashamed for the Amethyst Mountain. You're getting worse and worse." "You don't have to worry about that," Zhao Jiang said calmly. You're a disciple of the Li dynasty's Iron Sleeve clan, right? As expected of the Amethyst Mountain, they know the Li dynasty very well. Xiao Sun chuckled. Zhao Jiang said, You're bringing trouble to your own sect, do you know that? If you offend Chief Chu, I'll go to Dali and destroy your sect. Haha, how arrogant! Little Sun laughed loudly, but his eyes flickered. Zhao Jiang turned to look at the middle-aged man. You're a disciple of the Li dynasty's Golden Bell clan, right? Don't tell me you're saying that I'm also causing trouble for the Golden Bell sect. Zhao Jiang nodded. That's right. Chief Chu can't do anything to the Holy Church of Light, but it'll be a piece of cake for him to take care of your sections. There are only 2 or 3 disciples like you in the Golden Bell faction, so killing them will be a piece of cake. Little Sun is right. You really do have a big mouth. The middle-aged man named Pu said coldly. Zhao Jiang scoffed. You won't shed a tear until you see your coffin. How dare you assassinate His Highness in the fairy's capital with your meager abilities? What a joke. Then I'll have to give it a try. Little Sun harumphed indignantly. As soon as he finished speaking, he waved his long sleeve. Chi. A light whistling sound was heard, as if a saber chi had slashed across. Zhao Jiang flicked his finger. Puff. With a muffled sound, the sleeve energy turned into a gentle breeze, and everyone's clothes fluttered. Xiao Sun's heart trembled, but he maintained a cold smile on his face. He pulled out a folding fan from his waist. The fan was made of white jade, and the surface was made of white silk. 2 characters were written on it, Lu Yun. He gently waved his fan. Suddenly, there was a chi sound, and the wind from the fan whistled out. It was like a mournful scream, and the sleeve force was even fiercer than before. Flowing cloud fan. Zhao Jiang snorted and fiercely waved his sleeve. Pop! The 2 forces collided like a pebble being thrown into a lake. A gust of wind suddenly appeared, causing everyone's clothes to flutter loudly. What kind of sleeve technique is this? Little Sun asked with a frown. Iron wall sleeve. Zhao Jiang said, How does it compare to your iron sleeve technique? As expected of the Amethyst Mountain. Xiao Sun said coldly, but in terms of sleeve technique, it's still our iron sleeve faction. He clenched his teeth and waved his fan, causing shrill whistles to ring out. Zhao Jiang only responded with the iron wall sleeve. After a dozen moves, Little Sun's face darkened. He took a deep breath, and his handsome face flushed red. Then, he waved his sleeve. Whoosh! A gust of wind suddenly rose, as if a mountain torrent was born from his sleeve. It poured down and crashed fiercely towards Zhao Jiang. Zhao Jiang flicked his finger. Bang! There was a muffled explosion, and a gust of wind blew everywhere. Everyone squinted their eyes, and saw a hole in Little Sun's sleeve. What kind of martial art is this? Little Sun gritted his teeth, and his eyes were spitting fire. Zhao Jiang said, Terminating finger. Little Sun turned to look at Senior Pooh. Although he had a secret skill, he could not win this fight. If he used his secret skill, the opponent would also use his secret skill. The Amethyst Mountain's secret skill would only be stronger than the Iron Sleeve factions, and he had no chance of winning. Senior Pooh said calmly, as expected of the Amethyst Mountain. You have a strong foundation and countless martial arts. But no matter how many martial arts you have, it's better to be proficient in one. Even if you have 360 martial arts, I only need to take the Golden Bell technique to counter all your martial arts. Zhao Jiang nodded. The Golden Bell faction is strong, but do you really think you can block my Heaven's Thunder Palm? Why not try? Senior Pooh scoffed. Zhao Jiang shook his head and sighed. Come out. Suddenly, 3 people appeared from the shadows, and stood in front of Senior Pooh. Zhao Jiang said, How many Heaven's Thunder Palm can you block? Senior Pooh's face darkened. He had a unique talent, and he had cultivated the Golden Bell technique to perfection, and could block the terrifying power of the Heaven's Thunder Palm. However, the Heaven's Thunder Palm was the top antique study of the Amethyst Mountain, and he could only block 3 to 4 palm strike. The Amethyst Mountain's Heaven's Thunder Palm was shocking, and the inner energy consumption was also shocking. His opponent could only use 2 or 3 palm strikes, and he had the upper hand. Hence, he was confident that even if he could not defeat Chu Li this time, he would make him lose. As long as he could kill the protectors in front of him, his position in the Holy Church of Light would rise. The high officials of the Holy Church of Light were also divided into 9 ranks. He was rank 6 and Xiao Sun was only rank 8. If he could kill the protectors of the imperial residence of Qing'an, he would at least be promoted to rank 1. The Holy Church of Light had already issued a kill order, and all high officials were allowed to come to the Ji dynasty to assassinate Chu Li. If they succeeded, they would be promoted to rank 1 high official. Unfortunately, things did not always go as one wished. When he saw the 3 people appear from the shadows, his heart sank. The Phantom Ean's skill, these 3 people were also disciples of the Amethyst Mountain. Xiao Sun sneered and said, "The Amethyst Mountain is such a disgrace. How dare you send 4 disciples to the imperial residence of Qing'an as protectors? How embarrassing! You should think of a way to escape." Zhao Jiang scoffed. "The imperial residence of Qing'an is not a place where you can come and go as you please. All right, I want to see what the Amethyst Mountain is capable of." Xiao Sun scoffed. He was ready to go all out. He knew that he would not be able to escape if he did not put his life on the line. His aura suddenly changed, and it was as if an ancient man wearing a tall hat appeared in front of everyone. His sleeves fluttered in the wind and his aura was majestic. Bang! Zhu Tianhua threw a punch, trying to stop him from casting the secret skill. Bang! Xiao Sun flicked his sleeves lightly, and Zhu Tianhua was sent flying. He crashed into the wall, slid down, and sat limply beside Huiyuhao. Huiyuhao turned to look at him, and smiled bitterly. Zhao Jiang pointed at Xiao Sun and Senior Pu. "Use your secret skill. I'll hold this one back, the 3 of you take him down." Their figures flashed, and became faintly discernible, as if they were shadows reflected in front of everyone. They split into 2 groups, and each group pounced on one person. They were unpredictable, and as fast as lightning. Zhao Jiang attacked Xiao Sunday bang 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 bang. Xiao Sun desperately waved his sleeves, trying to escape, but his body movement technique was not as fast as Zhao Jiang, and he was always forced back. Lu Xing and Xiang Feishu also cast their secret skills, and attacked Xiao Sunday. After a while, Xiao Sun suddenly let out a long howl, and his clothes bulged like a balloon, forcefully withstanding a Heaven's Thunder Palm. He ran straight away, and disappeared into the night in the blink of an eye. Zhao Jiang did not chase after him. It would be difficult for him to survive a Heaven's Thunder Palm, and even if he managed to escape, he would not live long. He pounced on the middle-aged man with the surname Pu. One could vaguely see a golden light flickering on his skin. The middle-aged man with the surname Pu had a solemn expression on his face. He did not care about the attacks from the 4 people from the Amethyst Mountain, and his fists kept throwing out heavy and fast punches. Lu Xing could not dodge in time and took a punch. He also joined Zhu Tianhua and the others. Chapter 741. Huiyuhao said, "Senior Zhao and the others can handle it. Asking the head chief for help so easily, we are too useless." Lu Xing scoffed. As he spoke, blood flowed from the corner of his mouth. Even though Zhang Xian had used a secret art to strengthen his body, the middle-aged man had also used a secret art, causing his fists to wield incredible might. Being struck by the hammer felt as if he had been struck by a huge bell, and his body felt as if it was on the verge of collapsing. The middle-aged man's fist force was amazing. After hitting his body, the fist force spread like a bell and instantly reached his entire body. It was impossible to defend against. He could only defend his vital parts while the rest of his body was injured. Although it was not fatal, it was troublesome. He would probably need to rest for half a month. Huoyu Hao smiled bitterly. There's nothing we can do. The people the head chief offended are all powerful people. We were lucky to have the help of the seniors from Amethyst Mountain, Zhu Tianhua said. Huoyu Hao and Lu Xing nodded helplessly. They were originally prodigies, but when they met the head chief in the imperial residence of Qing'an, they fell from grace. They initially thought that the head chief was a rare powerhouse, but after staying in the imperial residence of Qing'an, they realized that there were many powerhouses stronger than them. Even if they cultivated with all their might, they could not catch up and could not be independent. This made them very uncomfortable, and they could only cultivate even harder. Dong 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 dong. 4 bells rang at the same time. Zhao Jiang and the other 3 used their heaven's thunder palm to hit the middle-aged man. He spat out a mouthful of blood and the golden light on his skin dimmed. He turned around and left. Dong 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 dong. Another 4 heaven's thunder palm landed. The middle-aged man slowly collapsed. Zhao Jiang and the other 3 looked around. 2 of them stopped their secret skills while the other 2 remained. He's a powerful person. Zhao Jiang shook his head. Too bad he came to the imperial residence of Qing'an. He chose to die. Zhao Jiang looked at Zhu Tianhua and the other 2. Are you okay? Zhu Tianhua and the other 2 quickly shook their heads. Hurry up and heal. We might have more guests. Zhao Jiang said. Yes. Zhu Tianhua and the other 2 entered the house. Qi Zimo chuckled. Brother Zhao, it seems like this junior has caused quite a bit of trouble. No wonder he wrote us a letter to ask for our help. It was all right this time. Zhao Jiang's eyebrows were still tightly knitted together. It might not be so easy next time. They were completely restrained in front of Chu Li, but in front of others, they were awe-inspiring. After all, the antique study of the Amethyst Mountain was superior to others. Qi Zimo came to a small tree in the corner of the courtyard and said with a smile, Do you think junior brother will really appear if this tree is cut down? Don't mess around. This kind of tree must be very precious. If you cut it down, there will be one less. Zhao Jiang snorted. I just feel that it's too dangerous. Could it be that they're trying to trick us? Qi Zimo's heart was itching. Zhao Jiang scoffed. Little junior brother is not that kind of person. Why don't we give it a try? Qi Zimo suggested. Zhao Jiang glared at him and walked up to the middle-aged man named Pu. Crippling your martial arts and banishing you from the public house is a mercy on us. You can only blame yourself for being stupid. As soon as he finished speaking, he slammed his palm on the abdomen of the middle-aged man with the surname Pu. Ignoring the resentful look in his eyes, he carried him out of the imperial residence of Qing'an. Chu Li appeared in the snow-lunar pavilion's surpassing boundary. Shao Qi sat by the lake as usual. She wore a flawless white tunic, and it was as if her entire body was in harmony with the lake water. Her heart was as clear as the lake water, reflecting everything but leaving no trace. Everything was like a passing cloud that was ultimately empty. Chu Li stood in the distance and looked at Shao Qi. He activated the nature restoration manifestation. He could see that her state of mind was calm without any distracting thoughts. All of her energy was focused on her sword. The long sword on her knees was like a part of her body, completely integrated with her. Her thoughts were also like a long sword that had been sheathed, completely restrained and without a trace of fluctuation. Suddenly, Chu Li appeared 3 steps in front of her. Shao Qi's clear eyes quietly fell on him. Her eyebrows were slightly furrowed. Chu Li felt a ripple in her heart. Why are you here again? Shao Qi frowned and asked. Chu Li replied, I came to deliver a letter. Where's the letter? Shao Qi looked at him quietly. Chu Li took out the letter and handed it over. Shao Qi's delicate hand reached out to receive the letter. Just as she was about to touch the letter, Chu Li moved forward and their fingers touched. A cool and warm feeling spread to the bottom of Chu Li's heart. He activated the nature restoration manifestation to the extreme and saw that her heart rippled again. Then, it calmed down as if it was suppressed by a strong force. She did not even look at him. Chu Li looked at her and thought about how to break through her state of mind and find her fatal weakness. Shao Qi opened the letter and looked down at it. She quickly folded it and stuffed it back into the envelope. She said, "Okay, I understand. You can leave now." Chu Li asked, "Do you agree?" Shao Qi shook her head. "I'm in isolated cultivation. It's a critical moment. Second eldest sister has you by her side. There's no need for me to go." Chu Li said, "I have to leave for a while. I can't take care of the second lady." "What is it?" Shao Qi asked. Chu Li said, "I'm going to the Holy Church of Light as a spy to find their weakness." Xiao Qi furrowed her brows and said, "Nonsense." Chu Li could feel the shock in her heart. He continued, "The Holy Church of Light and I are enemies now. If I don't die, they'll continue to hunt me down. There's no end to their masters. I'll die in their hands sooner or later. Since that's the case, I can only strike first." Shao Qi frowned. "Why are you enemies with the Holy Church of Light?" "I killed many of their masters." Chu Li said, "They came to the Ji dynasty to stir up trouble. I couldn't stand it, so I killed them." "You can't change your bad habit of being a busybody." Shao Qi frowned and looked at him unhappily. Chu Li smiled. "What's the point of learning martial arts if I can't serve the country and the people and protect the people around me?" Shao Qi took a deep breath and suppressed the shock in her heart again. "Are you really going?" Chu Li nodded. "You'll go even if I object?" Shao Qi looked at him with her bright eyes. Chu Li nodded. Shao Qi's heart trembled. She bit her lower lip and tried hard to suppress the shock in her heart again. She said, "All right, I'll go to second eldest sister's side." Chu Li smiled. "That's good." He was a little melancholic but excited. The nature restoration manifestation was indeed extraordinary. Although he could only feel the fluctuation in her heart, it was powerful enough. At least he knew which words would cause her emotions to fluctuate and which words would not affect her. Unfortunately, the nature restoration manifestation was not profound enough. His senses were not sharp enough and he could not predict her reaction. It seemed like he needed to go deeper. As long as his level was deep enough, he might be able to break her state of mind with just a few words. Through the nature restoration manifestation, he realized that it was best to have more contact with her to break her state of mind. He used the nature restoration manifestation to find the pattern of her reaction and make her heart constantly fluctuate. The quantitative change would lead to a qualitative change and finally break her state of mind. Although he failed this time, he was greatly encouraged. It seemed like he was on the right path to cultivate the nature restoration manifestation. He must continue to cultivate it. "If there's nothing else, then leave," Shao Qi said. Chu Li smiled. "My lady, when will you go?" "Now?" Shao Qi frowned. Chu Li said, "I'm preparing to enter the Li dynasty in half a month. My lady, you can go after that." Go ahead," Shao Qi said. Chapter 742. Let young Qi go to the imperial residence of King An. Shining, who stretched her body, forming a beautiful curve, showing off her graceful body. You finally did something right." They sat in the gazebo on the crescent lake. The lake water was clear, they could see the fish swimming in the lake and the water plants floating in the water. "If she continues to cultivate in isolation, she will only get further away," Chu Li said. "Senior Shun, you should go with her." "Me?" Shining, who was stunned, then she pursed her lips and smiled. "You really dare to think, why should I go?" Chu Li said, "I guess the masters from the Holy Church of Light will continue to assassinate. With Senior Shun here, I can rest assured." "Forget about me," Hu gently waved her hand and said lazily, I'm old, I don't want to suffer any more. I'm fine here. Li looked at her deeply. Senior Shin, do you want to be alone for the rest of your life? Lonely what? Hu shook her head and smiled. Can't a woman live without a man? Pavilion leader and my 2 senior sisters are all alone, they don't need a man, they live more freely. Li said, Senior Shin still can't let go of that man, right? He's dead. Hu glanced at him and scoffed, how do you know? Last time when you were heavily injured you said something, Li said honestly. Li said calmly, I know the pain in your heart, Senior. You don't have to be like this, he doesn't deserve such deep love. If he didn't die, perhaps you would have been working hard. He's not a devoted person, Senior. You've been lying to yourself all this time. Shut up. Hu's face darkened, she said coldly. Li said calmly, Senior Shun should know that he's entangled with other women. If he's still alive, in another year or 2, he'll find another younger and prettier woman. You're asking for a beating. Hu bit her red lips and stared at him, her bright eyes squinting. Li smiled. Even if I get beaten up, I'll make sure Senior Shin is completely awake. I don't need your kindness. Hu snorted. You're still a mess yourself, and you're still messing with my business. Li said, as the saying goes, the onlooker sees the game more clearly than the person involved. Others can see everything clearly, but when it's your turn, you're stuck in the game without even realizing it. You and I are the same, we can see each other more clearly. B****, shut up. Hu said coldly. Li tactfully shut his mouth and looked at her quietly. Hu turned to look at the clear surface of the lake. The gazebo fell silent. After a while, Hu sighed. You don't understand. Don't spout nonsense. I actually owe him a life. He risked his life to save me. Li raised his eyebrows. Hu said, when he sacrificed himself to save me, I told myself that I would repay him for the rest of my life. Even if he had a change of heart, I would not blame him. I would continue to like him and repay him. Li shook his head. A relationship between a man and a woman shouldn't be like this. What do you know about the relationship between a man and a woman? Hu gave him a disdainful look. Li smiled without saying a word. Without him sacrificing himself to save me, I would have been dead. What relationship is there to talk about? Hu scoffed. Just because he had a change of heart, you abandoned him, turned around and fell in love with someone else. You call that repaying him? Li said, just find a chance to save him. His martial arts is much stronger than mine. Hu scoffed. Li shook his head. That doesn't mean there's no chance to save him. In short, there's no need to repay him with my life. I can't be bothered to talk to a heartless person like you. Hu waved her hand. Li smiled. If you don't go, what if the lady and the second lady are in danger? Will you feel at ease? Why wouldn't I feel at ease? Your sister only has one daughter. Li smiled. Didn't she ask you to take care of the lady before she passed away? Li continued. The Green Hills' vitality is greatly damaged and they can't even take care of themselves. They don't dare to cause trouble at Snow Lunar Pavilion anymore. There's nothing to trouble you in Snow Lunar Pavilion. You'd rather stare blankly here than take care of the lady? You're such a bastard. Hu said hatefully. All right, I'll go with Young Chi. He finally grasped her weakness and knew that she was the softest. Li smiled. I've bought a house beside the imperial residence. You can stay there with the lady. The fairies' capital is bustling and filled with masters. You'll feel that Snow Lunar Pavilion is pitifully small and you'll be able to put your worries aside. Don't be a busybody. If you do, I won't care about you anymore. Hu scoffed. Li smiled. All right, I'll make a move first. I'll wait for you in Fairy's capital. Get lost. Hu waved her hand. He returned to Suru's waterside pavilion and took a book to sit in front of the desk. Outside the window was sparkling waves and a breeze caressed his face. Inside the window was a warm and pleasant place. The beautiful and gentle Suru was cultivating on the couch. A faint fragrance lingered and his heart was at peace. Li Hanyan walked in lightly. Suru opened her eyes and looked at her. Li Hanyan had a graceful figure and a beautiful face, but the words she said were not beautiful at all. "Brother Du, let's go kill someone." Chu Li put down the book and smiled. "Kill who?" "I've found two sects that deserve to be killed. One is the Titanium faction that specializes in killing and raping. The other is the Great Virtue clan that traffics children and women. They deserve to die." Li Hanyan scoffed. Chu Li said, "You still chant Buddhist scriptures every day, right?" "Of course." Li Hanyan nodded. "But they're still so murderous." Chu Li smiled. "Are you sure?" "Of course." Li Hanyan nodded. "I've confirmed it a few times. I've found out everything. If that's the case, they deserve to be killed." Chu Li nodded. Suru said, "Don't get it wrong and kill the wrong people." "It's not wrong," Li Hanyan said. Chu Li pondered. "All right, then let's go kill them." "You guys are really..." Suru said helplessly. Li Hanyan smiled. "Let's call Sister Xueling along." "Xueling?" Chu Li said, "She wants to join in the fun too." Sister Xueling said that she has a body full of martial arts but she can't use it. She's very upset. Li Hanyan smiled. "I think killing people is the best way to practice martial arts. Let Sister Xueling kill a few people too. She'll be even better." Suru said, "Xueling's personality is not suitable for killing." Li Hanyan smiled. "Sister Su, actually killing people is not scary at all. Think about the evil things they've done and the people they've harmed. Think about how many people will be saved after they die. It's very satisfying. I don't want to see blood." Suru waved her hand. Li Hanyan said, "Sister Xueling is not afraid of blood." Sigh. "You guys." Suru shook her head and smiled. Chapter 743. Li Hanyan quickly said, "I'll go look for Sister Xueling." She did not wait for Chu Li to reply and flew out. Suru sighed. "Is she okay like this? She's too murderous." She dared to say that in the entire Snow Lunar Pavilion, Li Hanyan was the one with the most murderous intent. Not only did she not feel disgusted or guilty about killing, but she was also very excited about it. She took pleasure in killing. It was really abnormal and scary. Chu Li shook his head and smiled. "It's all my fault for being too ruthless and affecting her. Let's take it slow." "Then why are we still killing?" Suru sighed. "I'm worried that if this goes on, she'll become addicted and feel uncomfortable if she doesn't kill for a day." Chu Li chuckled. "Don't laugh." Suru rolled her eyes at him. "You think it's impossible?" Chu Li shook his head. Suru scoffed. "Didn't you hear what she said just now? Killing is a joyful thing. Thinking about how many good people she saved, she'll feel happy all over. Is this the same thinking as normal people?" Chu Li smiled and nodded. "I have the same thinking as her." "You're right to think that way, but killing is a different matter." Suru shook her head. "Anyway, you have to be careful not to raise a female devil." Chu Li raised his eyebrows and slowly nodded. Suru's worries were not unreasonable. Previously, he brought her along to kill more than 100 people. She was too stimulated at the beginning and became numb towards the end, distorting her feelings. He still had to be careful. Fortunately, Li Hanyan was a pure and kind girl. She was not cynical nor extreme. She simply wanted to kill bad people and save good people. If he suppressed her thoughts too much at this time, it would not be good. "Take it slow, I'll be careful," Chu Li said. Suru nodded. Xueling followed Li Hanyan in. "Master." Xueling curtsied. Chu Li smiled. "Hanyan wants you to follow us to kill the Titanium faction and Virtue clan. Do you want to go?" "Yes." Xueling nodded lightly. Her face was like cold jade, white and flawless, beautiful yet cold. Her entire body exuded a cold aura, giving off an aura that kept people at arm's length. Even though it was a scorching summer day, it felt cold to be by her side. Chu Li muttered, "Actually, there are many ways to increase one's strength. You just have to spar with others." Xue Ling shook her head gently and said, "It's all showy but impractical. Without actual combat, martial arts are all just for show. Back then, when I sparred with someone beside Master, it was not a real fight." "Who told you this?" "I figured it out myself. My palm technique is not inferior to Brother Zhang's, but every time we fight, I'm always at a disadvantage." Xue Ling frowned. "My cultivation level is even higher than Sister Hanyan's, but I can't defeat her." Chu Li said, "With you by my side, there aren't many opportunities for you to use martial arts to fight with others." "I don't want to embarrass Master," Xue Ling said. "All right then, let's go together." Chu Li nodded slowly. The Vajra sect was located halfway up a mountain. It was a mountain peak that was 200 meters high. It was not considered big. The Vajra sect was hidden in the mountains. Not many people in the martial arts world knew about the Vajra sect, but the people around the sect knew about it. The Vajra sect sounded like a sect, but it was more like a mountain stronghold. Robbing was their second nature. If they did not rob near the Vajra mountain, they would not touch anything within 100 miles. They would usually rob from 100 miles away. They would kill the men and kidnap the women to the mountain. According to the people around the Vajra sect was extremely wealthy. The Vajra sect had 10 top-notch masters. Their strength was even higher than second-rate sections. They dominated an area within 100 miles, and no one dared to provoke them. Many martial arts heroes heard about their vile deeds and wanted to help the weak and get rid of the evil. In the end, they all died silently. The Vajra sect was still standing and no one could shake it. In the evening, 3 people came to the Vajra sect. One was a young man in a white robe, and the other 2 were graceful women. They were covered with white veils, revealing only their bright and beautiful eyes. They stared coldly at the Vajra sect. There was a huge decorated archway in front of the Vajra sect. The archway was made of white jade-like stone. The words Vajra sect were written on it. It was simple and unadorned. Behind the archway was a long stone staircase that led to the depths of the forest. The Vajra sect could not be seen as it was hidden by the forest. They had to walk step by step to see the true appearance of the Vajra sect. Once they stepped into the Vajra sect, they were not allowed to use their light body technique. Otherwise, they would be regarded as enemies of the Vajra sect and would be killed. Below the archway were 2 disciples in green with their hands on their swords. When they saw the 3 approaching, the 2 disciples in green glared at them. "Stop right there. Who are you?" Chu Li had already seen the appearance of the Vajra sect. He could see the situation inside clearly. He frowned. 2 grandmasters, 8 innate masters, 62 acquired masters, and more than 50 women were gorgeously dressed. Each of them had their own courtyard. There was a cave in the mountain behind the Vajra sect that was filled with gold, silver, and jewelry. Chu Li raised his eyebrows and turned his head. "I'll leave the rest to you. All of these people, other than the women, deserve to be killed." Xue Ling asked, "All of them deserve to die?" Chu Li nodded. He had already read each of their minds. These 50 women were abducted into the mountain. They had the people around them killed and then taken to the mountain. They had survived until now to see the retribution of these people. 2 grandmasters, 8 innate masters, and 62 acquired masters. Their hands were stained with the blood of innocent people. They deserved to be killed. "All right then, let's kill them all." Li Hanyan's eyes lit up with excitement. "I've heard of these people before. I've always wanted to destroy them." Xue Ling hesitated for a moment and slowly nodded. "Let's start with them." Li Hanyan scoffed and strode forward. You're from the Vajra sect? That's right. Then they deserve to die. Li Hanyan shouted. Her sword flashed and instantly pierced the throats of the two disciples. Her sword was so fast that the two disciples in green could not react in time. They clutched their throats and stared at her in disbelief before falling to the ground. Li Hanyan scoffed. Too weak. She turned her head and said, Sister Schwelling, are these small? Vinegar yellow partridge? Wounds? Skillful kite smokes jealousy sodium craftsman H vulgar cut and decorate partridge? Limey Fu Bao Schwelling nodded. Chu Li said, Hanyan, when you're killing people, you have to control your killing intent. If you're controlled by killing intent, it'll be hard for you to think calmly. If you're controlled by the feeling of killing, your mind won't be clear. Yes. Li Hanyan nodded vigorously. The two disciples in green did not have time to call the police. They calmly walked up the stairs using their light body technique. Soon, they arrived in front of a basilica. The martial arts field in front of the basilica was very lively. 62 disciples were training. When they saw the three of them using their light body technique, all of them stopped and glared at them. They gripped their weapons tightly in their hands. Those without weapons were also channeling their energy, ready to fight at any time. These 62 disciples were full of killing intent. Their eyes were cold. They looked down at the three of them as if they were three lambs waiting to be slaughtered. Chu Li shook his head. Kill them all. Yes. Li Hanyan responded and rushed out. Chu Li turned to look at Schwelling. Each of these people has taken at least 3 innocent lives. They deserve to die. You're tuning in to the Phoenix Knights YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.